Turn all the way down. Hello. Okay, this should be good. I don't know. I don't even know if you're audible right now. So I guess this would be a great time for an audio check. Okay. Keep. Uh, just keep saying stuff. Well, all right. Let me see. Hold up. Audio properties. Let's see here. What is it? Is it even displaying your audio through here? The reason I wanted to do this through the laptop is so I could screen share any articles I had pulled up, but I guess it wouldn't be impossible to just share them with you. Yes. Okay. I'm gonna have to pull Discord up on my PC then. For I'm not sure what it is, but the like my main PC is not picking up the audio from my laptop, even though I have it plugged in through like HDMI, like capture card. So that I don't know if like laptops have like a specific thing you have to do to enable it to capture the audio. But let me. I'm gonna hang this call up and then open it up on my PC instead, and then we'll see if that works. All right. Sorry for everybody watching on stream right now. I have my partner in crime today. Okay. My partner in crime today, like, he's on through my laptop, and I thought I could do it through the laptop, but I guess I cannot do it through the laptop, which is annoying. So I'm gonna have to do it through my PC, which is even more annoying. All right, let's try this. Hello. Uh-oh. Okay, there's another problem.
Okay.
Oh, I can hear you now. Good.
Do you want? Okay. Then. Do you want to actually just turn off like hardware acceleration on Discord, or is that already off?
I don't know.
Go to your settings in Discord.
Okay.
Like, and then head to advanced.
Advanced. All right.
Turn off hardware acceleration.
Oh yeah.
That's using your GPU.
Okay, that makes sense. Okay, but now do I have to reopen? Oh. Oh, it just completely restarted Discord. Nice. Awesome. Perfect. And by awesome perfect, I mean not awesome perfect. Because it's also destroying my frame rate. But I guess once it restarts, it'll be okay. Sorry for everybody watching on stream. Okay. Now what? Oh. Okay. Well, hopefully that at least fixes one problem. Okay, hello?
Oh.
Hello, hello, hello.
Whoa.
Okay, I can hear you. Nice. Okay.
Okay. Good.
Now the question is, can everyone in chat hear you? So, I don't know if anyone is even like listening right now. Which is fine.
I'll keep talking and see if I can hear myself at least, so that way we'll test this out.
All right. Let me. Where's my phone at? I can just pull it up on.
Okay, I can hear myself.
Good.
Yeah. Yeah, and then connect your phone to your PC, right? As your screencast?
Oh, actually, you know what? I think this is one of the first times the audio levels are like pretty equal, so that's great. Like
Awesome.
one of the few times we've done like a collaborative effort where the audio levels are equal. But anyway, I think everything's good now, so that should be good. I should also be able to close Discord on my laptop, or at least minimize it, because I'm probably going to at least use Discord on the laptop to send you any links or something that I bring up in regards to this discussion. But yeah, for everyone who just for everyone who's been here for the past 7 minutes, so today's stream, the whole point of this stream is to basically predict or give our predictions, thoughts, and general, I don't know, hopes for the Nintendo Switch 2, which tomorrow, for those who don't know, I'm assuming most people who would be watching this would know, but if you don't know, tomorrow there's going to be a Nintendo Direct showcasing the Nintendo Switch 2, the successor to the Nintendo Switch, which is I'm pretty sure at this point is at least their second most successful console of all time. I don't know how close. I know it's like really close to the Nintendo DS, which is their most successful console, or at least system of all time. And as far as home consoles,
Oh yeah, definitely.
as far as home consoles go, it is the most successful console from Nintendo anyway. Although it's once it, and I assume that it will surpass the DS, but by the time the Switch 2 comes out, and maybe even after that. But I don't know if it'll. I don't know. I don't know if it'll catch up to the PS2, but it could get very close, like too close. But anyway, mainly, yeah. For those who don't know, there's a Nintendo Direct tomorrow showcasing the Nintendo Switch 2, and that's the whole point of this video or this stream is to talk about that, our predictions and hopes and stuff for that. So yeah, and for those of you who don't know, I'm joined today by Varietal Mimics. So if you want to go ahead.
All right. So yeah, hello everyone. I'm Rob Emmix, and I'm back on the TactiCast. Pretty much, we're gonna be, as the TactiCast has said, we're gonna be discussing our predictions and hopes for Nintendo Switch 2, which pretty much is gonna be coming off the current second best Nintendo system being sold. So we'll see how this goes so far, and like what our predictions and hopes are. Because I have some predictions that I might have some hot takes about, but we'll see how this goes. Pretty much, of course. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, we'll talk about some confirmed news from Nintendo side already that we do know, and then we'll just try to see like what can we interpret it based off that, pretty much. So that's mainly what we're gonna be doing, being here.
Yeah, and I will say, like, I do, uh, keep somewhat in the loop as far as like what some of the, because I like to sort of, when I think of like my predict, because I'm not trying to just predict stuff for the console hardware itself, but also potential games that could come from that, because well, it's a game system. And I try to listen to, I guess, some ideas that from other sources, let's just say, and sort of form, you know, maybe my own interpretations of those ideas. Because, like, for example, one of the main channels that covers the type of stuff I watch is Game Explain. And also the sort of spiritual successor to that, which is Good Vibes Gaming, I think.
That's actually pretty much John's channel, not like
Well,
not related to Game Explain. I think
well, no, yet
mainly, yeah.
Good Vibes. They basically everyone but Andre left Game Explain and started Good Vibes Gaming, from what I remember.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So like the only one left that originally like was part of the main team is Andre, and he's got a new team there, but I think as much as that sucks, I think it's a good thing to have sort of two different for competitive reasons, but also for two different streams of news too, because I think Good Vibes covers stuff that Game Explained doesn't cover sometimes, and vice versa. And I think that's a good thing in general. But I also watch stuff like I used to watch Review Tech USA all the time, He used to be like one of my go-to for like stuff unrelated to Nintendo, but he went off the deep end. uh, at least
Yeah.
by that I mean like he's not the Review Tech USA I remember, and he completely deleted his channel, which wasn't the smartest move I don't think either. But then also I do watch RGT85 occasionally as well. Um, for he's sort of the one I go to for like kind of the rumor mill as far as the Switch 2 goes. Because the thing is, I only listen to the rumors to sort of hear, because at the end of the day they're all just rumors, but it kind of gives me an idea of okay, what could I speculate from this myself too? Because at the end of the day, I also think that the majority of people who are anticipating the Switch 2 kind of had the same idea with some variation on that. Like everyone, I like to think that everyone is kind of has similar expectations of, like, for example, hardware specifications, uh, uh, launch titles, launch window, and just the sort of impact that this console launch will have on Nintendo going forward too. And there's definitely variation on that, on you know, on everyone's ideas on that. But I think in general, everyone kind of has the same level of either excitement or prediction, I guess. Oh, another one I watch is Kit and Krista, because they used to actually work at Nintendo, so they kind of have an idea of
Ah,
how.
yes.
Yeah, they used to work at. They used to be Nintendo Minute, and they kind of. I
Yep.
I I actually watch. I've started watching them a lot recently because I think my thought is, well, of all the people speculating about Nintendo, that don't work at Nintendo, at least anymore. Uh, Kit and Krista would have the most experience, and and they would kind of have an idea of how Nintendo likes to do things, right? And
Yep.
I've even, I think over the past, like, because they have their own podcast too, but like they sometimes have like big industry heads. Like I think they had Reggie on at one point, and they had like Jeff Keighley and stuff like that. So they're
Yep.
I see
They
them
did.
as much more, maybe not completely in the news loop, but they have connections that some of the other um, gaming news channels don't necessarily have.
Right.
But is it? I mean, is there any sort of anything you want to add to just that at all before we get into the nitty gritty?
Like other than pretty much that, I was like another channel I would also pretty much be frequenting would be like how Nintendo, like some Nintendo related channels, mainly related to their controllers or hardware, like Wolf Den, Spawn Wave, beat 'em
Spawn
ups,
Wave.
you know
Yeah.
those channels,
Yeah.
right?
I do.
Yeah. So
I
like,
I don't watch Spawn Wave that often because like uh, to me it's a little too like structured. If to me, I don't know, it's too fast paced as far as the news goes. But I am subscribed to them, and specifically like well, as of recent, I've kept them on the subscription feed, I guess. But I do like you said. Uh, oh, what's his name? Is it John or something? Like, isn't he
yeah,
the main
yes,
guy
it's
on it?
John.
Yeah, I do like his sort of
Yes.
hardware stuff. Like, I remember he did like a GameCube, something related to GameCube, but I forget what it was. But I do generally like his stuff too, and he doesn't he usually have like I think it's just called Spawncast, but he usually has RGT and like Player Essence on there too. I think is part of.
Yep, it's Spawncast.
Yep, yep. Because I do like Player Essence too. He does, but he's more of on the RPG side of things, from what I remember.
Yeah, I
But
think that
go,
make
go
yeah,
ahead.
I believe so. I just don't watch him particularly. I just mostly watch on Spawnwave, the
Mhm.
Spawnwave channel itself, because I'm more into the tech behind things and just like teardowns and all that. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I
and
do
then of
like it.
course like he brings up some.
Oh, I was gonna say I do like
Go
it
ahead.
when you a lot of the videos that sort of break apart what's inside anything really, but especially game consoles and even the stuff that's even controllers too, because it like take the Joy Cons for example. Like you look at the Joy Con, if you had no if you had no knowledge about the the what goes into the Nintendo Switch, um, like if you weren't an early adopter like I was, but even if you're just you're just going to the store and you're like, hey, Nintendo, the new Nintendo, let's just get that. You don't realize, looking at the Joy-Con, how much tech is packed into that little form factor. Just the right side Joy-Con, but even the left too. Um, like there's a lot going on in that small package. You know what I mean?
Yep, because and we we were also like currently working on a video like a controller retrospective video that will be coming out sometime
Mm-hmm.
soon. We're still working on that, by the way. It's just
Oh yeah,
like,
yeah,
but
yeah.
yeah,
We've been
like
yeah.
just like but to summarize some of it right now is that we both really do have to appreciate a whole lot to say about those Joy Cons because the tech inside it is just insane at this point. But obviously, where people always keep complaining about is the Joy-Con drift. That's
That.
obviously just one big flaw of the Joy-Cons right now, and it's been the biggest flaw. Like no one's gonna deny that.
Well, and not only that, as much tech, um, useful or not, as much tech is packed in to the Joy Cons, uh, very rarely are the Joy Cons used. Have the Joy Cons and even the Pro controller. Very rarely have they been used to like to their like full potential. You know what I mean? Like, uh,
Oh yeah,
there's
definitely.
only a handful of games that utilize the HD Rumble, for example, to in a way to where you can tell that, oh, there's something there's something different. Like this isn't just your average vibrating controller. No, it's you know, it's a like it can the HD Rumble can actually do things that uh, other Rumbles just literally can't do. And uh, in fact, um, that HD Rumble was one of the things like in the beginning of the Switch's life cycle that I was like, oh, this could actually like change the way you immerse yourself in games, because like there was a lot of things that they hinted at in like for example 1-2 Switch, but not only that, um, I think I forget what other games I know. For example, Mario Party. To me, Super Mario Party was like the sort of first party, other than 1-2 Switch, was the uh, another sort of tech demo for the Joy-Con, and especially the HD Rumble. But like to me, that was something that like if they didn't, uh, it seemed like they dropped it, or at least they didn't drop it, but you know what I mean. They didn't use it as much as they could have. You know, you good?
Right. Like, yeah, I'm good. I thought my mic. I didn't realize I accidentally muted my mic again while I was adjusting it.
Oh,
Sorry
okay.
about that. But yeah, like no, I agree. Like like the Joy-Con HD Rumble, it's really like it's one of the coolest features about the Joy-Cons. There's no denying that, considering like that when you get to play games like 1-2 Switch, where in the 1-2 Switch game, it show you can feel like the rumble inside the controller on how many balls would be inside like a box, for example. But then when you take it out of that context, like it's kind of unfortunate that not many games are utilizing this technology, and it's really showing because like even the PlayStation 5 controller, which had something similar to it, it is like showing like barely any games are using this feature, which is really sad.
Yeah, isn't it like haptic feedback? Is
Because
that what they call it on PlayStation?
I
Or
believe so.
because
Yeah,
I always saw that as like as a it like that to me that's kind of its own like brand of rumble, like or
right.
vibration as far as that goes. Because like uh, to me the difference between that and HD rumble was like the HD rumble isn't just to make the controller vibrate. Like you can do uh, oh, you know what? Another game that used it was Labo, Nintendo Labo. Because remember,
Right.
there was that weird, I don't know, just sort of micro game within Labo where like you put the controller in this little cardboard cutout, and the vibration would make it like move around, and you could actually turn it left and right because of the HD rumble. It was actually it was it was it for games, for actual like for sort of the hardcore style of game. I wouldn't say it would be the most useful technology, but for like I don't know, I could see something like that be like that's the thing with Nintendo consoles, Nintendo hardware in general. Like for when you think about it, like nin, for example, the Nintendo DS. The Nintendo DS was like really one of the first devices to really do touchscreens properly. You know what I mean? In general, before even the
Oh
iPhone,
yeah, definitely.
because that was a thing. There wasn't really a lot. There were touchscreens before the Nintendo DS, but there wasn't really good application of touchscreens. When the Nintendo DS came out, like they designed this entire thing around using a touchscreen, and then I think it was 2006 or 2007 when that first like iPhone came out, and that's when like now I'm not saying uh, whoever created the first iPhone, like Steve Jobs or something like that. I'm pretty sure it was him. But whoever created it, who or at least whoever was in charge of it anyway. Uh, like I'm not saying they were reverse engineering a Nintendo DS, but to like I see that as like Nintendo proved that touch screen functionality was the future. You know what I mean? And
Oh yeah, definitely.
and Nintendo, I don't know what it. I mean, I know what it is, but I don't know what it is about Nintendo. But they like predict the future with a lot of their hardware. Uh, they don't always hit the mark, like hit it on the head. Like for example, um, the Wii, massive success. Motion controls were a massive success in general, but I wouldn't say all applications of motion controls, even to this day, are you know widely positively received. But uh, another uh, another example that's a positive is well the Nintendo Switch. before the Nintendo Switch, there wasn't really a proven standard device that or standard like handheld device that could play, you know, the AAA gaming experience on the TV and on the go. And it wasn't until now you have the Steam Deck and like the Lenovo Legion and ROG Ally and stuff like that. But before that, and you got to think, those didn't even those weren't even those didn't even start coming out until like 3 years after the Switch was already out, right? I could be
Yep,
wrong by
pretty
like
much.
a couple months or something like that, but like those didn't even those weren't even thoughts. At least until the Switch was on the market and it was a proven concept. It was like, yeah, no one even like I think there was like Nvidia Shield or something like that before then, but it was a poor
Except that's
execution. Oh yeah, I think I
I
know
would.
where you were going with that because
Oh, go ahead.
I think I know where you were going with that. It's like the Nvidia Shield was a poor execution, but ironically the Nintendo Switch is basically the Nvidia Shield, right? Executed properly because of the Tegra X1 chip, I believe, right?
In a way, yes. The
Mm-hmm.
only, I believe so. Yeah, that's pretty much what it is. But obviously, it's been on put on record that yeah, Nintendo has partnered with Nvidia to help make the Nintendo Switch graphics card pretty much. So that actually is part of the reason why the performance is actually a lot better than people expected in comparison to like compare it to like the other consoles
Yeah, they're like handheld devices similar to it, right?
of the previous generation, which would be something like the PlayStation 3 or the Xbox at the time, yeah, at the time, pretty much, because the Nintendo Switch obviously is not competing on power levels at
Mm-hmm.
all in most aspects. They will upgrade the power, no doubt about it, but then that doesn't. But as Nintendo has stated several times, is that the power adjustment, like trying to increase the power, is not what we should be striving for when it comes to like creating video game
Mm-hmm.
consoles, especially considering that like as we've seen like that Nintendo has predicted incredibly well like this age like fine wine obviously that the more like console generations keep going on and the more they keep putting focus on power, the idea that consoles pretty much are the main way we can play games and the best way that we can play games is going to die out extremely hard. Like it just proved itself too because hardly like right now we are in an era where the Xbox One and Series X and even the PlayStation 5 are out, yet not a single person I know cares about them as much as something like Nintendo consoles. Like in comparison, heck, PC has even thrived over these consoles easily. Like it's not even up for debate.
Well,
Like I think I think the only people who buy these things at this point are just straight up the hardcore fans or straight up the like fighting game scene players. That's it.
well, see, and that's the thing with the traditional console in general, especially with Xbox and PlayStation, um, and even to an extent, you could have said the Wii U back when that was still a thing. Um,
Right.
I would say most especially with Microsoft, but Sony is getting into that territory too, where the uh, consoles are now essentially just PCs, and at this point, they also
Right.
cost of consoles now have gotten so high that you might as well get a PC for 9 times out of 10. And the one thing that brought you to these consoles, which would have been the console exclusive games, are starting to die out. Where games that naturally you would hope should be exclusive to these consoles are not only coming to PC but coming to other consoles, especially in Microsoft's case, where Microsoft is trying to put Game Pass on everything. Uh, which, you know, we won't talk about Game Pass, but Game Pass was bad enough. Putting Game Pass on other consoles is honestly worse. I think, uh, in the long run. And I've been hearing talks about PlayStation games also coming over to other consoles. I mean, PlayStation games have been playable on PC for a while, but very select titles. But I think uh, the PS5 has not been selling as as good as they had hoped, right? And I think one of the big problems, or one of the big things that held them back, was just the fact that just in the you know how in the beginning they were like, oh, all of our games for the foreseeable future are going to be on PlayStation 4 and PlayStation 5, and for Xbox One and Series X. And I think that hindered the that made the transition from the old consoles to the new ones less urgent, in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like, I think,
Yeah, yeah, I get what you mean.
and it's not
Oh,
like
go
they
ahead.
couldn't just do like the new consoles are aren't they backwards compatible? Like, isn't the PS5 backwards compatible with the PS4? I could be wrong on this, but uh, I,
It is.
yeah. And then I would assume, especially with them basically being PCs, being backwards compatible should not be as difficult as something like the Wii being backwards compatible with the GameCube, where you had to use a completely different disc format. You know, like at this point,
Yeah.
the especially Xbox and PlayStation, like the formats are virtually the same. It's just the power now. So, like, with it being backwards compatible, honestly, to me there's no reason why a company should make, or I guess I should say, telling your consumers that, hey, you don't have to buy our new console right away. That that's that is uh, that is your company shooting yourself in the foot. Like, as a business, you want your consumer to, uh, even if you don't just completely discontinue the previous console, you want to be like, oh no, you want to buy our new system because if you want to play the new, next big thing, you're gonna need the new system. You know, and I think Nintendo is
Right.
doing this at least from uh, bringing it back to Nintendo, right? I think Nintendo is doing this actually the smart way. If this I guess I guess I should add that to the sort of list of bullet points I have here, but the virtual game card concept, right? Uh, which I think the virtual game card concept I think was made in preparation for the Switch 2. Like I don't think they would have made that just for the Switch 1. I don't know. The timing seems fishy. You know what I mean? Um, like,
Oh yeah.
and you know what? I'll go ahead and segue to a point that came to mind after credit where credit's due. I got this sort of idea from Game Explain after I saw just sort of. I'm not going to reference the exact video, but it came from Game Explain, and it actually made me think about it. The Nintendo Direct that just happened last week, even though it wasn't really about the Nintendo Switch 2, I feel like it was secretly about the Nintendo Switch 2. Because to me, there's a lot of hints in that direct, not necessarily, uh, flat out, you know, uh, not necessarily flat out, spelling out, oh yeah, this is for the Switch 2. But there's a lot of fishy, uh, I'll just say hints in that direct. Like, for example, one, the virtual game card. To me, and actually, if you go on their website or where the virtual game card like page, that's where you see like Nintendo Switch 2. Uh, it references the Nintendo Switch 2, and it says like, oh, uh, games for Nintendo Switch 2 won't be transferable back to the Switch 1, which is number one, confirms that it's going to be on both systems, and also I think confirms that you'll be able to transfer at least Switch 1 games to the Switch 2, and maybe not back and forth. So I guess if you, I don't, maybe I'm skipping ahead, but like another example of how that direct was also secretly one about the Switch 2, Metroid Prime 4. There was no release date in the at the end. I'm pretty sure every single game that was showed either had a release window or a release date. So like it was either coming out on this exact date, or it was coming out sometime X year, X month, etc. The only game that did not have a release window was Metroid Prime 4. And I think that's because at this point, it's being made with the Switch 2 in mind. And I think there was actually two other games on there that had a 2026 window as well. I think it was Rhythm Heaven and Tomodachi Life. Rhythm Heaven and Tomodachi Life were slated for 2026. Those are the only two games that were slated that were, I guess, revealed for 2026. And if you look at both of those games, they're not necessarily graphic powerhouse games. You know what I mean? Especially Rhythm Heaven. 90% of that game is, two-dimensional. Well, it looks like mostly PNGs, but like Tomodachi Life, I would say that's quite a bit bigger of a game than something like Rhythm Heaven, but you can tell just by them going with the sort of cell shaded art style, which is also kind of interesting that they're going with that. Uh, it seems like it wouldn't be a game that would need to be. They would need to have a whole lot of focus on it a whole year from now. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I guess we can go ahead and get into, since we're talking about the direct. How do you think they're gonna structure this? As far as, like, what do you think? What do we think we'll see in general? And I'll let you just sort of take it away. Just from
All
the
right.
direct.
So based on the way that we've seen so far with how Nintendo presents their brand new consoles each and every single time, I think what they're going to pretty much do with this one in particular, I feel like they're going to do a comparison on exactly what makes the Switch 2 different from the Switch 1, and then we're going to also pretty much hear about more of like what technology went into the Switch 2. But if I'm recalling like how they presented the Wii U pretty much back then, like it seems like that it's going to be a bit misunderstood, considering that like when they actually did release the Wii U at the time, right? Everyone thought that the Wii U gamepad pretty much was just, oh, it's an attachment to the Wii. That's not what it is, obviously, at the end of the day, and what we found out later down the road. I feel like Nintendo's probably not going to repeat the same mistake, and I'm hoping that they can like clearly explain to us what makes Switch Switch 2 different from the Switch 1, pretty much.
That's been, you know what?
And obviously, they're. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say that's been sort of the consensus I've heard from every sort of channel that I've, or every sort of source that I've been following in regards to the Switch 2, because it, uh, no matter what, it's all like, everyone has what they hope for the system, of course, but getting people to migrate from the Switch 1 to the Switch 2, and this is a point that came up from when I was looking at, or watching Kit and Krista's channel, because they've been in the middle of like console launches, uh, making people make the switch from pun intended, transition from the Switch 1 to the Switch 2 is going to be the most difficult thing, I think, because they have to make it blatantly obvious, I think. It's got to be so obvious that this is a new system that that people will be like, oh yeah, I don't want this. I'm exaggerating, of course, but you want people to be like, okay, clearly I don't need the Switch 1 anymore. I want the Switch 2. Or someone going to a GameStop and, or I'm just using this as an example. Someone going to a GameStop and being like, okay, I want the Nintendo. Because that's what they're going to say. The normie is going to go in and be like, okay, give me the Nintendo. And
Right.
they're going to be like, oh, well, do you want the Nintendo Switch or the Nintendo Switch 2? And they're like, what's the difference? Because I feel like people have that same idea with like the iPhone, right? Or most, especially iPhone,
Yeah,
because
definitely. Like, same with.
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, yeah, definitely like the same case like with iPhone and Samsung devices, pretty much, where like obviously the normal person is not gonna know the difference at a glance, especially when considering that the name is the only thing that's changed.
Yeah, and
Because
I think
like we're seeing this case.
I was gonna say, and I think one thing that will definitely, I guess, help is, or I guess help with decision making as far as making sure that the normie going to the store and buying the system knows exactly that, oh, I want to get that one. I think the most obvious thing they have to do is make the console like box SKU look vastly different from the Switch, because the Switch, at least the OLED, and I think even the standards, at least the 2.0 model or whatever, they have a very red box art. Like you go to the store and it's completely red with the Switch on the front of the box. I think they have to go with something. They have to go with a completely different look of the box, so you can look at it and be like, okay, that's not the Switch 1. That's a completely different system. They can't go for the solid red, is what I'm saying. Because
Oh yeah, definitely.
I think like if you go to Walmart, I think this is a better example, because like if you go to Walmart and you go to the gaming section and you see that the store shelf with all of the consoles behind the glass cabinet, and you're like, okay, which one of these is the Switch 2? I think that I think Walmart's an even better example, because sometimes, in fact, most of the time, the people behind the counter don't even know what what the Switch 1 or the Switch 2 is. You know what I mean? Uh,
Yep.
Yep. But anyway, yeah. I that's gonna be the thing that they'll have to convince the normies of the most. But I think too. There's some people in the like I want to be convinced. I mean, obviously we know it's the new system, but I want to be convinced like there's something about the Switch 2 that makes it not only better, but makes you want to get it over the Switch 1. You know what I mean? Um,
Right, because obviously we don't want like the failure like right now that we're seeing with PlayStation or Xbox.
yeah, because I think aren't people still getting like PS4s? I mean, obviously,
Surprisingly, yes.
yeah. Like, I mean, obviously they're not like flooding store shelves right now, but like I mean, I don't have a PS4, but I would rather get a PS4 than a PS5. One, because there's more games on the PS4, at least that are made for the PS4. Uh, and obviously the PS4 is cheaper. Even the PS4 Pro, I think at that point, if you want to get the PS4 Pro, you might as well get the five. But still, like the PS4 on its own already has a massive library worth of games that uh, getting it unless you're locked in to the exclusive IPs of PlayStation, uh, like I wouldn't say that the PS5 5 years in has had really maybe has had one killer app, and that might maybe I wouldn't even say it's the Spider-Man game. I would say the only killer app they've had since launch is the God of War game, and that
Hmm.
that from what I've heard, it's not even like their best version, and I don't know. I haven't kept in that loop, but like every other sort of killer app that you can play on the PS4 5, you can also play on the Xbox One X or Series X, and you can play on PC. So, um, so yeah, I think. Well, I mean, obviously Nintendo isn't going to have that problem with their first party titles, but uh, I guess I'll go ahead and
Well, I want to interrupt a bit
okay.
because, like, I was gonna say, like, that. Actually, now that I think about it, there is one app that, like, there's only one game out there that right now showing off the PlayStation 5 that you would actually want to get, and I don't think they're ever gonna release this game on any other platform, considering that it's a home run to all PlayStation titles, and that is Astrobot.
I I
That's it.
I
But
knew
that's
you were
about
gonna
all I
say
can say.
Astrobot, and the reason I knew you were gonna say that is because Astrobot is like really the only non Nintendo game right now, non Nintendo first party game on another system that captures the sort of Nintendo audience. You know what I mean? Like or
Yeah,
the
obviously,
Nintendo
I know
type
what you
of
mean.
audience. Like
Definitely.
I would say Astrobot is the only non Nintendo game in years that has tried to capture, you know, the E for Everyone audience. Like, I can't. I think what was it, Super Lucky's Tale, that was on the Xbox One at least at first. Wasn't that Rare? Didn't Rare make that game, or at least they were somewhat involved in it?
I think so.
Yeah, but Super Lucky's Tale is on the Switch, or it's um, like a defin. I don't know if it's the main game, but like Super Lucky's Tale, I'm pretty sure it's on the Switch now. Which I mean, I think I remember hearing that game was at least decent. It was like, oh, I think I remember hearing like, okay, this is like a poor man's, you know, Banjo Kazooie knockoff or something like that. But still, like, I guess you could say, I don't know. I was gonna say, I guess you could say Sea of Thieves, but that's like a live service game, and I, it had a very cartoony
I
aesthetic
wouldn't
to
say Sea
it.
of Thieves, honestly.
I mean, I'm not saying it's a killer app. I'm just saying a game where they're actually trying to court like a younger audience. But uh, I wouldn't even probably Super Lucky's Tale would be a better example of that. But the Xbox side has virtually nothing like that. So I think PlayStation needs to keep Astrobot as like, okay, because the thing is, even though I would say it looks like a killer app to me, it obviously didn't do that great, and I think they need to try again. Do another one, do do Super, or was it Astrobot 2? Um, even on even on the do it on the PS5, but uh,
Astrobot is on PlayStation 5 exclusive.
no, I know, and that's a good thing. Um,
Right.
yeah, but that's all they have right now, unfortunately, as far as like.
Yeah. That's on. Right. Because
Mhm.
like, obviously, I don't think anyone's actually buying a PlayStation 5 other than to play like Astrobot, and that's being genuine. Because like, obviously there was Assassin's Creed that came out, but then like most people are probably not playing that on either one, and they're probably just gonna be playing that game like on PC thanks to Steam. Like
Yep.
it's kind
That
of crazy. Like
I, I
what
I will
like
say, like, one of
and
the.
like
Oh, go ahead.
go ahead. Oh,
Oh, I
okay.
would.
I was just gonna say,
Mhm.
like, it's get like we're back into this cycle, like, of everything. Eventually, like, PC gaming's taking over because like the consoles aren't innovative enough at this point, and that like if you can just play these games like on PC at this point, then what's the point of getting the console, which is the sad reality that we're dealing with? Because most people I've spoken to, like, and I've actually asked this, like, what's the point of the Switch 2? They couldn't give me a definitive answer on why this actually has to happen, other than it's eventually going to happen. Like, obviously, that's the obvious answer, but why is it happening is what no one could provide me an answer for. And I think this is exactly what I'm fearing, like, that probably no, like, we're starting to become at a point where I don't think anyone's going to be caring enough about consoles, and that they're going to be fine with letting PC take over because we're not innovating anymore with the consoles. Whereas Nintendo is pretty much the only worthwhile company to invest console or money, like the money into consoles, because they are being innovative.
Well, it's good. It's a good thing you mentioned that because this was something very specific. I actually thought about this uh, most of the day. In fact, I thought about this as I was watching the Kid and Krista podcast today because they were talking about sort of their final hopes before the Nintendo Switch 2 Direct happens tomorrow, and I thought about this watching their uh, podcast, and I was like, when you think of when I think of like the gaming industry as a whole, at least for, and if you just thinking right now with the Switch 2 coming out, or at least being unveiled very soon, and by soon I mean within the next 12 hours, um, the ball of the entire industry is in Nintendo's court, and people like to make. I feel like people like to make fun of Nintendo, as far as like, oh, Nintendo never makes like the powerful console. No one ever pays attention to Nintendo. Everyone only cares about PC gaming. But what people don't realize is that every time a Nintendo console comes out, the entire industry either is influenced by it or straight up tries to copy it. And case in point, Steam Deck and Lenovo Legion and ROG Ally and all those type of things. The Nintendo Switch, like, nobody was doing that. And nobody was doing that correctly, we'll say. No one did it. No one did it as seamlessly as, and no one still has done it as seamlessly as Nintendo. People like to parade the Steam Deck as like the the rich man's Switch, but it's like the the Nintendo the the Nintendo Switch. You plop it on the dock, you turn the TV on, it works, right? Now I'm not an expert on the Steam
Right.
Deck, but to my understanding, you don't do that with the Steam Deck. You don't plop it in the dock, pull the controllers off, and it's on the TV and it works. There's like a one, two, three, four-step kind of process, at least four-step process that you got to do to get it to work on your TV. And the Steam Deck is probably the 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 more, I guess, the closest to seamless you get as far as the sort of handheld PCs goes. Like I don't know. I doubt the. I know the one thing about the Lenovo Legion is that it has a mouse pad on it, but that's another thing. Like, well, I'll sort of go through the sort of history, a brief history, right? For example, when the Wii came out, uh, literally nothing before the Wii was doing motion controls. Nothing. No. Yeah. GameCube, Xbox, original Xbox, PS2, nothing was doing motion controls. The Wii, and then because the Xbox 360 and the PS3, didn't they come out right before the Wii? Like maybe
It came out.
within. I know the Xbox
Xbox
360
360
was
and
the
PS.
first of that generation. Because I
I'm pretty
remember.
sure that the. I'm pretty sure the 360 came out after the Wii though.
No. Because I remember it
Hold
came
on,
out in
let me
2005. And then Wii was 2006. Or if it was 2006, it was early 2000. Because I remember, I think I specifically remember I think I had a friend who already had like a 360, and I was like at their house or something like that playing the 360, and there were still like Wii commercials as far as like, oh, the new console that's coming out is the Wii, as far as Nintendo, and it was the big craze because of this new way of playing with the Wii remote. But even even after even when the 360 was out, there was no motion controls at all. No one even considered gameplay like that. And then Nintendo comes out with the Wii, and then about a year and a half, I would say a year and a half, year and change, after the Wii is already out and everybody's playing Wii Sports and everybody's playing. Did Mario Kart Wii? I don't know. Mario Kart Wii is probably a later game, but like, I think Legend of Zelda Twilight Princess was using. Every game on the Wii was using motion controls in some capacity. Um, uh, a year goes by and you get the Kinect and you get the PlayStation Move. Maybe a year and a half. I don't know. I forget the timeline, but uh,
Right.
but it wasn't until Nintendo was like, let's do motion controls. Let's try this. Let's try this out. And all of a sudden, everyone does it. And eventually, it became at least in that era, it became sort of a passing fad. The Xbox and PlayStation like immediately. I feel like they just immediately abandoned it after the next generation came to be. But Nintendo sort of, they wanted to sort of refine the motion control idea, and so they kept it going into the Wii U and kept into the Switch. But then Xbox and PlayStation, at a certain point, kind of phased it out. And but still, the moral of that story is like Nintendo said, let's do motion controls, and then everyone wanted to do motion controls. And even well, I guess even with what is presumed to be, oh, greetings, O tactician of the musician. Hey, Wii Man, welcome to, well, funnily enough, we were just talking about the Wii. But our discussion about the Nintendo Switch 2 and what to expect, or what we expect, or what we hope. But even this speculation of the Nintendo Switch 2 having a mouse functionality, like the only system I'm pretty sure, the only device other than like a laptop, the only dedicated gaming device I know that has mouse functionality built into the system is the Lenovo Legion, but it is a mouse pad, like it's a laptop mouse pad on the face of the system. Whereas there's nothing there's nothing you can buy on the market where the controller is the mouse. And I guarantee you, if the Nintendo Switch 2 comes out and the Joy Cons have mouse, which they do, it's to me it's a guarantee that they have mouse functionality in some capacity. If they come out with mouse, uh, controllers with mouse functionality, give it a year, give it a year and a half, and Xbox, PlayStation, and even whatever the successor to the Steam Deck is going to be, they're going to have mouse controllers. I guarantee you. Uh, Either that.
What's more realistic is this that like, well, I was going to mention that the PlayStation controller technically has a touchpad. I think what they're going to finally do is just add more innovative usage for the touchpad. Is what I'm going to just say we technically. Because technically that's what the ROG Ally has, and same thing with the Steam Deck, where they just do have touchpad usage. It's just hardly any game uses it unless you go into Steam Input directly for like the Steam Deck stuff, and then you just pretty much manually set up things like that. Because that's how I've been playing like a couple of shooters on PC lately with just the controller and using just the Steam Input for using the touchpad. But that's that's getting off topic right now.
Well,
And that's gonna be like some other discussion we'll have to do later.
well, so that's actually that'll come up actually later, I think, because I also have
Right.
a sort of prediction with the Pro controller
Yeah.
as well. But as far as like, because
Right. And as I was just saying, like it's. Oh, go ahead.
oh, the thing I was gonna say is, well, first of all, I think we have about a second worth of delay, but that's okay. Um, Also, my cat is trying to get on top of me. Um,
Oh, boy.
um,
Also, hey, wee man.
yeah.
Also here.
Hey, the the thing to me, okay. Uh, I am aware of I think both PS4 and PS5 have, or maybe it's just the PS5 controller. They have the mouse, or it's the touchpad, right? But I've always,
Both,
to
yeah,
me,
both PS4 and PS5 have it.
yeah, to me, and this is just a personal thing, but a mouse slash touchpad will never be the same as a traditional mouse, in my opinion, especially for gaming. But even when I'm using a mouse on my computer, if I'm using my laptop, I have to plug in a mouse. Like, just personally for me, if I'm not using a mouse, it it's the speed and precision kind of thing. If I don't have to keep tapping the mouse pad to make sure the cursor's at the right spot. For a video game, I could see a mouse pad working better than it would on a in a work setting, I guess. But even when I'm playing like something like a shooter, or for example, Minecraft. I play Minecraft on PC occasionally. Um, I played it on a laptop too, and after like after the first 5 minutes of me trying to use it on a mouse pad, I usually end up plugging in a mouse so I can use an actual mouse for speed of use. Now I think there are certain games where you could get away with using a mouse pad slash touchpad, and that's where I think the Nintendo Switch Pro controller is going to come in eventually. But um, as far as the Joy-Cons come into play. Like that, I think specifically for the Steam Deck, Lenovo Legion, ROG Ally, that those kind of things. I think because the Lenovo Legion already has a detachable controller. Pretty sure. Like you can detach the controllers from the side. Uh, they're not as like I guess easy to detach as like something like the Switch Joy Cons, to my understanding, or maybe they are, and uh, I just never saw it properly done. But like the Nintendo, oh shoot, where was I gonna go with that? Oh yeah, so if Nintendo makes a, I guess with the Joy Cons being having a mouse functionality, I still think that because I also think that eventually there's going to be like a Steam Deck 2 or a, you know, some sort of successor to pretty much all of these handheld PC gaming devices because they will eventually need some sort of hardware increase in power whenever the games get too powerful for them to run it, right? It's just, to me, it's just a,
Right.
a natural occurrence of games getting bigger, more powerful, etc. And with that, to me, eventually being inevitable, one of these companies is going to mimic Nintendo in some form or fashion. It's just, to me, that's just a guarantee. Whether they do the mouse functionality or not, Nintendo's going to do something with something else with the Switch 2 that somebody's going to copycat. And uh, and that was the thing I was saying was like, yes, all these systems have touchpad in it, but nobody has a actual mouse where you put the mouse
Right.
on the mouse
No
pad
true
and
mouse usage.
yeah, no DPI, I guess is the best way to put it. No DPI sensor built into the system. Honestly, you would think with I'm surprised Xbox didn't think about this a long time ago. You would think the company behind, well, computers would have thought about this at least 10 years ago. They let Nintendo get to a mouse controller before Microsoft. you know, uh, to honestly, just thinking about that is kind of bizarre. But yeah. Anyway, do you have any additions to that?
No, I don't think I do have any additions to that. Considering like that what we already discussed, I think it's mostly already said, and I don't want to repeat anything in particular because yeah, as you already said, pretty much that it's kind of insane to think about that. Like when we're at a point, pretty much like that we have all these kinds of innovations on how we can play games, and yet while the closest technically we could get to quote unquote an actual mouse was technically the with the gyroscope pretty much. It's not exactly what we wanted. And sure, pointing with like IR pointing pretty much with the Wii remote is also a close enough second. I think it's actually the actual closest we're probably going to get to it, but it's still nothing compared to like using a mouse. And like I want to definitely see how they're going to implement the mouse usage, like the mouse DPI sensor pretty much into like other games we're going to be seeing in the future. Like obviously Splatoon will be an example like we could possibly see it
Yep.
in, but like what other cases do we have? Because at right now I cannot see much like about what we can do with it because it is kind of hard to identify what exactly would be the main purpose of it, you know?
True. All like the thing is, this is Nintendo. They're going to find, uh, as with all of their console launches, and if you think about it, even through history, at least if you start with like for example the Nintendo 64, every console
Oh yeah,
had
definitely.
every every console had like a game that they that essentially showed everyone that, oh, this is what this system could do, and and this this is going back. I would say it wasn't as obvious with like. No, I guess you could say the Super Nintendo because like the launch game for the Super Nintendo was Super Mario World, and to me, that game in particular was like showed people that the Super Nintendo not only is more powerful but can because Super Mario World is a very colorful game in comparison to all of the Mario games before it, right? But then you go to Nintendo 64, and that was a whole different thing, where like their their tech demo, from what I remember, was well, you had Super Mario 64, but I think there was also Pilot Wings and Wave Race 64, and those three games in particular showed exactly like, oh, this is what 3D gaming is gonna be, because the the PlayStation One was already out, I think a year earlier, and they had 3D as far as just the perspective of 3D, but they didn't quite do it right until until Super Mario 64 came out, and that blew every 3D game before it out of the water. And then everyone was like, okay, we got to do Mario 64. you know. Um, and then, but so there, to me, the most tech demo-y game that they have on the 64 was actually Wave Race, because it showed that was like a game with like real time physics and water physics and just a lot. I don't know if you ever played that game, but it was actually a technical marvel at the time, because there was really no game that kind of got just physics in general right like that game did. And then I think at GameCube you had Luigi's Mansion, which was an interesting choice for a tech demo. But it was, if you look at Luigi's Mansion again, that game is actually very impressive for like the detail that they got, the techniques they used to make the game feel more three dimensional than it actually was. You know what I mean? And then of course you had the
Yeah.
Wii tech demo, Wii Sports, which uh, honestly Wii Sports was like a perfect tech demo that I think Wii Sports was the most successful tech demo of all time. uh, and it probably still is. I 1-2 Switch. That how much did
I
that sell?
agree. I honestly kind of would say agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But and like obviously every single system should have came with a tech demo. Unfortunately, like the Switch obviously, as we said, doesn't
Yeah.
come with it. Like once you Switch, you have to buy it as a separate title entirely.
The original Xbox felt more like a successor to the. It basically was, because that's me replying to Wee Man's comment. I'm pretty sure it was because
Yeah.
Microsoft had a hand in the Dreamcast development. Pretty sure, and then the Dreamcast.
Actually, it's the opposite. It's Sega that had a hand in development of the Xbox after the Dreamcast failed. That was actually what it was. They
Ah,
didn't. It's not Microsoft having a hand in helping with Sega. It's Sega actually looking into Microsoft and having them help it. That's what it was.
well, yeah, because I did. What? Because I did know, like, one that was actually the first system to have broadband capability, like, just internet
Right.
capability
And
in general.
also, like, you know how and you remember the memory saves thing, like on how we had it on the Dreamcast, right? Xbox took that idea pretty much, thanks
Yes,
to
yes.
Sega.
Yep, yep. Oh, well, yeah, because, like, I guess for the longest time, Nintendo, before the 64, Nintendo's partner in the tech world was Sony. And I think I think the Sega, up until the Xbox came out, was partnered with, with Microsoft for for at least the like every inch. I haven't I don't know too much about it, but like the the Sega Genesis, for example, and the Saturn. How much did Microsoft have any involvement in that? I would be surprised if they didn't.
I
But
don't think so.
but I know for sure that there was definitely. Get off of here, Katie. It's on my desk. Get off. Where was I? Oh yeah. Well, where was? Oh, we were talking about tech demos. Yeah. Um,
Right. Right.
there
Like
with
every single Nintendo console so far had a tech demo. Well, obviously, like
yeah.
we already
You know what's
mentioned, like
funny? I
all the
don't
other
think.
ones, obviously, with the Wii Sports being.
Yes. Oh, I was gonna say. I don't think do we ever really see tech demos for PlayStation and Xbox? And by tech demos, I mean games that show off what the system, the breadth of what the systems can do. Because what
Right.
what can
Sadly, Xbox ditched this model. Like at this point, Xbox has nothing. There's no tech demos for Xbox because at this point, Xbox is literally just nothing but a generic gaming only machine that is just worse than a PC.
well
That
yeah
is
yeah
all it is,
because
and
what
that's not something like. And what
well yeah. With
like
what you're saying,
in
like what could the X really what could the Series X do that the Xbox One couldn't do? And the answer is nothing, other than play slightly better looking games. And then what could the Xbox One do that the 360 couldn't do? Now I'll give this 360 a pass because that was actually a mega jump from the Xbox One. Or there's the problem with calling it the Xbox One. The original Xbox, and they actually had quite a few like launch tech demos for the 360, from what I remember. But
Yeah,
specifically the
definitely.
X.
For every single little innovative piece of tech, like the Kinect obviously had a great library of tech demos you could probably try out. Like, and it was like a really great time. These days, I, I don't think Microsoft is doing tech demos anymore. PlayStation still does have tech demos once in a while. Like when the PlayStation 5 first came out, obviously the killer title that showed off everything pretty much was Astro's Playroom. And because of how popular that went, we obviously knew that Astrobot came out afterwards, and
Yep.
look apparently where Astrobot came out. So obviously we're not going to talk about Astrobot too much, but just want to mention that yeah, PlayStation still definitely will do tech demos, considering that their controllers are the most innovative part that they have been showing off lately, and it's really nice to see that.
Well, so on the subject of tech demos, and we can actually, after this particular subject, we can actually get into sort of what our hopes are for games in general for the Nintendo Switch 2. But
Right.
um, there's definitely, I feel like there's definitely going to be a tech demo using the mouse functionality of the Joy Cons, and I don't I don't think it's just going to be using one Joy-Con as a mouse. I think there's going to there. I think we'll probably see 2 or 3 games. Like uh, we had 1-2 Switch, but I feel like Arms was also a tech demo for the Switch for what you could use the Joy Cons for, right? Because those were the first 2 games that they fully showed for the Switch. And
Right.
obviously, 1-2 Switch uh, showed all the things you could do with the Joy Cons in like bite-sized portions, but Arms showed what you could do with the Joy Cons in a in more intense setting. Um, and of course, there are other tech demo related games, but you had two. You had 2 basic tech demo games, right? And I think the Switch 2 we'll have at least two, maybe three. Actually, I think another good un- underlooked or overlooked tech game that you could consider a tech demo for the Switch 2 was Snipper Clips, because that was another game that one required two players, but it was built around the ability to take both Joy Cons and pass one to a player two. And to me, that was like the perfect like showcase, the perfect game to like let other people know. Like if you take your Switch on the go, right, and you go up, I don't know, like I had a very specific example of this when I used to work at a restaurant back in the day when I first got the Switch. I brought my Switch to work, and they were interested in it. And they were like, "Hey, what you playing there?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's a Nintendo Switch, just came out." And I was like, "Hey, can I play it?" And I was like, "Yes, you can, and I can play it too." So I gave him the player two controller, and I held player one controller, and we played Snipper Clips. And I was like, "Yeah, this is a game that you could do that with." And I guess I see that as sort of a concept tech demo, right? A tech demo for the concept of the Switch. And so I think the Nintendo Switch 2 is going to have probably three games that show the different things you could do with the Switch 2. And I think one of those games is going to one game is going to involve just one Joy-Con, or like just one Joy-Con where you can in the same way pass the other Joy-Con to a player 2, and both players use the Joy-Cons in their own way. But I think there's going to be a single player tech demo where you use the mouse functionality of both Joy-Cons at the same time. That will be interesting. And that actually gives me an idea too of the potential for not necessarily VR, but VR style games where you're controlling both hands at the same time. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, definitely. Because like like Oculus Quest right now, obviously, like that comes with two controllers and one for each hand. So I could see what you're talking about.
Yep, yep. And uh, this idea came to mind once again from a game explain discussion, but I kind of wanted to uh, go more into detail of that. Where it, I'm almost imagining like a sort of motor skills test of a game, where you have to sort of challenge yourself to. Uh, I think I think it was like Brain Age or something that they were kind of thinking where it's sort of a test of like uh, you have to try to because it's a left and right side of your brain sort of thing with trying to do one thing with the mouse in your left hand and doing a whole other thing with your mouse in the other hand. And I feel like they're gonna try to use that in some form. I don't know what form that's gonna take, but it's gonna involve using both side Joy Cons as a mouse. And then also, I think tech demo number three, and this idea is just a perfect idea. Mario Paint. Uh, have you ever experienced Mario Paint? I think I played it one time at a friend's house, but I remember liking it. So, but it was sort of
Yeah, I played Mario Paint on an emulation on some emulation. It was really fun.
yeah, it was I, I wouldn't say that is in and of itself is a game. I could actually see that being a feature baked into the system, uh, like a similar to like what the Me creation channel was on the Wii, where it was its own software that you created a Me on, uh, and then you had to like home button out of that software. But I could see in a similar way, like a Mario Paint style experience being baked in to the Switch 2 in some way, because that game that game is sort like back then on a Super Nintendo that would have been like a big game, but I feel like now it's almost like a program more than a game. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah, definitely. Considering like we have Microsoft Paint, we also have like a lot of other art related games out there at this point. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and there were some ideas I heard people talking about where they're like, oh well, what if you could like create a profile icon or something like that with Mario Paint, or with the interface of Mario Paint, or what if you could create a personal theme or something like that with the idea of Mario Paint. And Mario Paint also had the music uh, uh, composition little portion of it too. Um, but yeah, I could see if they don't do that, they could still do something where they just use Mario Paint as a tech demo sort of thing. I don't know if it would be really a tech demo, because to me, I think one of those three choices could be a tech demo, but I think they also need some sort of graphical showcase tech demo too. Like for the Switch, I think that was supposed to be Zelda Breath of the Wild, but it was too, because that game struggled on the Switch. Uh, yeah, yeah, it did struggle in a lot of parts of the game, especially in the there's a there's a Korok forest. I think there's a forest section in the game, and it really had a consistent drop in frame rate uh, because of all of the lighting and shadow effects that were specifically in that area. But in the majority of the rest of the game, it actually ran pretty fine, and obviously it looked fantastic for the style it was going for. Um, I'll let you take it over for a second. I think I have to feed the cat for a minute, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. Actually, I think I need to take a break real quickly to use the restroom. So you want to put up the BRB screen now, real quickly? Well, because I need.
Yeah, so give me about 2 minutes, and then we'll be right back. Well, I'm back. Okay. Um, we still good?
Yep.
Man, you
You
still
back?
here? Yeah, I'm back. All right. Um,
All right.
well, with that, with that short intermission. Oh, Nat, what's up? Hey, we're talking about the Switch 2. Okay, so what did we just get done talking about? We were mostly talking about mouse functionality, tech demos. Uh, so games. Um, Before we get into actually what games we think will come out of this, how do you think? Because I do have a sort of hope of how they sort of structure this Nintendo Direct. Because one of the things that I feel like has been missing from previous directs, really ever since like 2019, is sort of the to me the charm of like seeing the faces of uh, seeing the people behind these developers or behind the games talking about their experience or talking about the games themselves. When do you remember the Switch One presentation?
Oh man, that is a nostalgia trip. I literally got like the entire presentation actually for the video. So
Oh yeah,
just like
yeah. Well, so um, one person I hope we see him, but Yoshiaki Koizumi. To me, that was my favorite. That was my just his entire segment in that presentation was my favorite part of that entire presentation, and I hope whatever whatever functionality they showcase in this Nintendo Direct, he does the like, you know, he's the one doing it, and he does it in the sort of magician freaking style that he was doing it because. Um, I don't know. I feel like it in this stage of Nintendo, they've moved away from sort of they've moved away from I guess performance really, and they've just been like, okay, here's what it does, here's what's coming out, here's what we're doing, goodbye, you know, and with the occasional, what did you think? Like if you look at the Nintendo Directs in the past, really 4 years, like it's just been rapid fire news. No real like it doesn't feel like they're talking to the customer all the time. You know what I mean? And I hope at least there's a little bit of that in this direct.
yeah, I really hope that so too because considering like what we've seen over the years, yeah, most of it is just obviously you said as the rapid fire news we had. So it's pretty interesting that we've had these times where we're just doing like we're just waiting for more tech like more updates on like games and obviously the games are obviously great. So I guess for now, well like we're at a point where a lot of the games we had expected already had came out pretty late and I feel like it's a bit too soon to ask for another sequel in some of these games, you know?
Well, I guess we can go ahead and get to the games portion of this. So, it if we look at sort of the time frame of how these how the Nintendo Switch One games released, especially in the first. If you're so, think about it. Think about just the first year the Switch came out. Switch launched in 2017. In that year, we had I think almost five of their like heavy hitting, you know, franchises all out in the same year. We had Zelda Breath of the Wild. Now, that was a Wii U game, but everyone, the majority of people got it for the Switch. They got it so they could have that big game to play right out the gate for the Switch. You had Breath of the Wild.
Right.
You had Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, also for the Wii U, but people buying the Nintendo Switch buying a Nintendo game at a Nintendo console at all, you're gonna want some sort of big multiplayer game to also hold you out. But so they had their big Zelda, they had technically their big Mario Kart, they had their big Mario Odyssey. That was a big game, and both Mario Odyssey and Breath of the Wild were uh, Game of the Year contenders of that year too. So that was a big year for Nintendo in general. But they had Xenoblade Chronicles 2 came out that year. You had and both I think Odyssey was October, Xenoblade 2 was December, Breath of the Wild was March. Splatoon 2 came out that year. That's right. And of course they had ARMS. Um, there, there was another big one that came out that year. But it was like five major franchises that came out in just the first year. And then the very next year, you had Smash Brothers. Yeah, Smash Brothers came out in 2018. Um,
Y- yeah, I think. Yeah, it came
28,
out in 2018. Or
2018 was like the year of the third parties, I think, for Nintendo because they had a lot more third party support the next year after the Switch had already like after they saw okay, the Switch has been selling 20 something million units already in the first year. We got to start putting games on this thing. So that's when you got Fortnite, you got Rocket League. Poor ports. Not necessarily the best versions of the games, but they got them, and that was the important thing. Didn't they get? They got The Witcher. They got The Witcher 3, which
yeah, we got The Witcher.
yeah, The Witcher 3, which I remember people being like flabbergasted that that game could even run on the Switch. Uh, that and Doom, which again, objectively the worst version of the game, but still the fact that they got that thing to run as smooth as they did on the Switch, they got that thing to run crazy good. Devil May Cry, was that on the Switch? Did they put that on the Switch? I don't remember.
I don't recall. Hold on.
But I'm trying. Of course, there was Smash. I got to look at the. Since I have this up here, what was the? Let me just pull up. I don't know, Wikipedia or something. Nintendo Switch. First party.
Oh yeah, it did come out on Switch. Wow.
Releases. History. What would be the proper way to do that? I guess first party games, and I could order them by date. Games. Games list. Games by release date. There we go. Okay. Every mainline Nintendo Switch game. No, I don't want Reddit. Oh, here we go. Nintendo Switch only games. Oh no, I want like a easy to read list. Fandom maybe. Freaking. This is probably a horrible idea to pull it up on Wiki. Wiki is not known for having smooth. Okay, maybe this will work. 2017. Okay, what do we have? Of course, 1-2 Switch. That, you know, say what you want about that. Okay, Nintendo Switch. ARMS, of course. At I wouldn't consider that a maybe for Nintendo. Like personally, they probably saw that as a big game at the time, but it didn't have the pedigree yet, right? So that was a first try game. But you had what did you have? Okay, you had Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, of course. That was still the Mario Kart game on the Switch. You had okay, that was 3DS. I was gonna say Metroid Samus Returns, but that's 3DS. Pokken Tournament DX. That's a port from the Wii U, which was a port from the arcade. Okay, Splatoon 2, that was the big one. Mario Odyssey, that was the other big one. Breath of the Wild, massive one. Xenoblade Chronicles 2. Okay, so those are your five like heavy hitters in 2017. In 2018, oh, I forgot about that. Bayonetta 1 and 2 came out as a bundle. Then you had, Tropical Freeze. Duh. Which, again, a port from the Wii U, but Tropical Freeze is a very highly acclaimed game, I would assume. Right? From what I've heard. Mario Tennis Aces, I wouldn't say that did the greatest, but they really tried to hype that one up as a great one. Oh yeah, Octopath Traveler. Octopath Traveler was a big one at the time because that was like
Oh man.
that was a game that they really hyped up in the original presentation of the Switch. And I actually have Octopath Traveler, and I played it, and I actually love Octopath Traveler. That was one of my big takeaway games of the Switch One. I was reacting to the. I don't have it. I had it recorded at one point in time, but I never made it into a video because I was the only one that was like semi-positive during the whole thing, and everyone else that I was reacting to it with was very critical. And I was like, man, I don't want to be the only person who likes the stuff here. But I was like, it didn't go as well as I wanted it to. But I was positive about Octopath Traveler, and I liked the game, and I love the music in that game, by the way. But so we had Octopath Traveler. We had let me go to so y'all can see what I'm looking at here. We had, of course, we had Super Mario Party came out that year too, which, looking back wasn't the best Mario Party, but at the time that was like, okay, finally we have a return to form for Mario Party. And then Super Smash Bros. Ultimate also came out. WarioWare, that was 3DS, but okay. Torn of the Golden Country. Okay, so 2018 was sort of a slow year as far as the big heavy hitter games. So you had Mario Party, and then you had Smash Bros. Ultimate. And then Torn of the Golden Country, that was DLC. 2019 was a big one. Astral Chain. Luigi's Mansion 3. I completely forgot about Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Games. Fire Emblem Three Houses. That was big. Pokemon Sword and Shield. You can hate the game. Hate it or love it, that's a big game. Mario Maker. That was another big one. Yoshi's Crafted World. Technically wasn't that big, but it's a major Nintendo name, and that's the Yoshi game, right? Did Kirby come out? Oh no, it was Epic Yarn. Okay. Then in 2020, we had Animal Crossing. That was huge. Kirby Fighters. I don't even remember that. Paper Mario. I guess you could consider that a big one. Oh yeah, Xenoblade. 20 was kind of a lull year. Now that I'm looking at it, yeah, that was kind of a lull year. But so, Bravely Defaults, Mario Party Superstars. Okay, that was like the Mario Party that everyone actually liked from the get-go. Oh yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, Metroid Dread. That was a big one. That was like finally a new Metroid game and a good one. Bayonetta 3, of course. Fire Emblem, Warriors 3 Hopes. That was DLC. No, Warriors. That wasn't DLC. That was a sequel. Legends Arceus. That's a big one. Scarlet and Violet. Splatoon 3. Xenoblade 3. Yeah, so most of their big names, they've had at least... almost 2 entries for every name on the system, brand new. At, not counting like the third party sort of partners like Platinum Games, because I mean you had
Right.
Astral Chain, but then you had Bayonetta 3, which you could say games style of games are both very similar. But like you had Xenoblade Chronicles 2 and Xenoblade Chronicles 3, both new games, not remakes on the Switch. And then you had Splatoon 2 and Splatoon 3, both new games, not remakes. Which I don't think they should ever do remakes of Splatoon. I think it's redundant to do any ports or remakes of Splatoon. But Mario,
Yeah, especially considering it's like a live online shooter service game. So
yeah, yeah. Oh yeah, that's right. And 2023 had Fire Emblem Engage, and oh no, 2022 also had Kirby and the Forgotten Land. Don't want to forget that. That was a big one. I remember people being blown away by that. At least by the original trailer. Um, Especially for a Kirby game. And then for last year, it was a lot of remakes. Yeah, Princess Peach Showtime, I would say. Oh, and Echoes of Wisdom. Oh yeah, how could I forget? Tears of the Kingdom. Duh. And then Pikmin 4. Yep, that was a big one too. And Mario Wonder. Um, Almost every year had just as many, if not more, remakes or ports as there were brand new games for the Nintendo Switch, right? What I'm getting at by listing off all of these is that pretty much at least all of these names, all of the names that I've mentioned, as far as the the series as a whole, have had at least almost all of them have had at least two new entries on the Switch. Whether they're big or small titles, and I'm thinking that they got to be working on one of these, at least one or two of these, and they probably have already had them in the works for a while. And uh, I would say at least one is a launch title. I think, without a doubt, I have zero doubt that Metroid Prime 4 is going to be a launch title. To me, there's a reason they didn't have a launch date. They didn't even have a release window. They didn't say what year it was coming out. They didn't say what month it was coming out. They didn't say what day it was coming out. They just showed the trailer of Metroid Prime 4 in the last direct, and they didn't even say it was coming to the Nintendo Switch. I mean, obviously it's coming to the Nintendo Switch because it was a Nintendo Switch Direct. But normally you'd have the Switch click and then the trailer. But they didn't even have that. So to me, that's like, okay, number one, the footage we saw in that trailer, I hope that footage we saw in the trailer was coming from the build, the Nintendo Switch 1 build. And I hope that the Nintendo Switch 2 build of that game is going to look considerably better than that. I would hope so. And obviously we know from what we saw in the Switch 2 trailer was that they're working on Mario Kart, presumably Mario Kart 9, right? Maybe Mario Kart 10.
Presumably, yes.
Maybe Mario Kart 10 if they're gonna try to count Tour, which people are saying that they might.
I think they'll definitely will, because considering that we got tour tracks and like Like
Yes.
considering Mario Kart Tour is technically the ninth Mario Kart game and an official Mario Kart game too. Considering that like Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, right, technically added in tour tracks, so we can
Yep.
pretty
Yep.
much say that yeah, Tour is an official game.
Yeah. So, people are speculating that they may call it Mario Kart X, and the X is the 10. I don't know if they'll do that. I don't even know if they'll do numbers again. I mean, they probably will, but like the way they did it with like Mario Kart 7 and 8 was just kind of random. Like they just randomly started to count the Mario Karts. I think it was just an odd way of doing that, and I think it would have been better if they just kept the subtitle going. But um, if they just follow what they've been doing with Mario Kart 8 and they call it Mario Kart, I think it would be better to call it Mario Kart X than 10 because people who didn't probably didn't even know Tour existed are going to be where's Mario Kart 9? So I think Mario Kart
Yeah.
X would be smarter. Um, but there's also uh, th- there's a couple speculations of maybe not games that will be anywhere close to launch, but are trailers that we may be expecting or just maybe in the pipeline. Monolith Soft has been working on a non-Xeno related game since the Switch came out. I don't know if you ever saw the concept art for Monolith Soft's like uh, standalone series. Did you ever see those?
No, I have not.
Well, you know what? Let me. This is an opportunity. Can you see? I don't know. Are you able to see the? I guess I'm not screen sharing it, but maybe I'll send like. Uh,
Like I am behind pretty much right now on the screen, so yeah.
okay, I can send you links though because let me see. Monolith Soft concept. Oh, uh, new IP concept art. Okay, yeah, okay. I'm just gonna go ahead and send you this. Do I not just get a link to? I guess I can go to images. Okay, here we go. I'm gonna copy this and send it your way so you can get a visual on this. Dang, that's a long ass link.
All right, I'll check it out right now.
But these are pretty old images, but like they've been around since 2017. But you can see there's definitely like an idea you can see they're going with, and it looks like, especially with like one of the one of the standout images I've seen so far is this wide angle shot showing this, you know, massive open world with like layered cliffs and a mountain in the background and like cities on the bottom. And to me, I see this and I'm like, this looks too big for the Switch. You know what I mean? I don't know. Can you see it? If
Yeah.
like,
Yeah, I'm seeing it like right now.
yeah, this
Like I'm zoomed in on the image right now.
yeah, this particular image, I don't know, looks too big for what the Switch is capable of on its own. Oh no, I meant to open image in new tab. Like, at least for the scale that this is trying to convey. And so people are speculating that this IP, now that we've already seen Xenoblade 1, 2, 3, and X all on the Switch as we know it, in some way, right? Of course, Xenoblade 1 and X came in a definitive edition. But you can play all 4 games on the Switch. Uh, which I'm pretty sure for every other Nintendo franchise, I'm pretty sure that's not possible. Maybe
Yeah,
Zelda.
that has never been a thing. So this is insane.
Like it, maybe if
No,
you,
not even Zelda.
because I'm trying to think. Yeah, no, because they don't have. No, they don't have Twilight Princess or uh, freaking Wind Waker. I know you could play like a good deal, a great deal of them on like NSO, but even if you include those, there's still not Twilight Princess and Wind Waker and some of the other ones. But yeah,
Yeah.
so people are speculating that at least for a good while, Xenoblade is done, and they've been working on this new Monolith Soft IP for almost 10 years at this point. And if you sort of scroll through like some of these images, you have this image of this girl in like a suit of armor, and then there's also another one that's sort of in like an ancient cathedral of sorts with angel statue, and there's some other. Oh, is this a newer one? Oh yeah, I do remember. Like this was maybe 5 years ago, that there was news of like Monolith Soft hire like going on a hiring spree for their next big project, right? Um, and so people are speculating that we may see at least a hint of that in this direct. Um, we may not see. We may not even see uh, like a cutscene at all. We may just see. Do you remember the original teaser of Bayonetta 3 where like they just showed like a logo at the Game Awards and that was it? Or
Oh
the
yeah, I remember that.
or the original Metroid Prime 4 reveal, which was literally just the Screw Attack logo, and Metroid Prime 4 is now in development. The end. um,
Yep.
both very minuscule reveals, and I think we may see something like that here. Like if we see Monolith Soft at all, it'll be that. Unless they do another thing that I hope they'll do, which is, and I almost guarantee they're going to do this with at least one game, but they're going to show what an enhanced Switch 1 game will look like in comparison to a Switch 2. Do you think that's a possibility? Like say they put probably Tears of the Kingdom as the most recent example of Zelda. They'll probably have like Tears of the Kingdom, and then they'll say, okay, this is what it looks like on the Switch 1, but look at what it looks like on the Switch 2, and this is why you want to get the Switch 2. You know, uh, can you see that being a thing?
I could somewhat see it. Yeah, considering like that since like some Switch games will probably be playable on there. I'm not sure like what they're really gonna do other than probably artificially just up the resolution on them, but that's the only thing I could think of, you know?
Well, so that comes as part of a thing that let me see if I can find this. Nintendo Switch Virtual Game Card page. Oh, yeah, right. Okay, right on Nintendo's page. Let's see. Okay, this is why I have a feeling it's like Nintendo Switch game, like Nintendo Switch 1 game enhancements on the Switch 2 isn't just going to be a minor upscale, or at the very least, it's not just going to be you plug your Nintendo Switch cartridge in and it's just going to look better. Let me go ahead and send you this link too.
Like it's gonna run better, right?
Well, both look and run better. I think it's going to be a little more complicated than that. So, and you can kind of see a sort of subtle hint of that in this page right under the little video they got here. They say, virtual game cards make digital games even easier to use. That's the subtitle there. But under that, it says, the virtual game card feature for Nintendo Switch and Nintendo Switch 2, so that's a confirmation that it's going to be on both systems, adds some of the flexibility of physical game cards to your digital game library. If you have two systems, you can digitally eject and load games from one system to another, and you can even lend games to members of your Nintendo account family group. We know this. There's a certain point in this. Where's the point where it talks about? Okay. At the very bottom, you see the stars here. And the first one is about Switch Lite, and Switch OLED. Available, so anything with the 1-star mark, available on Nintendo Switch, Nintendo Switch Lite, Nintendo Switch OLED model systems in late April 2025. A system update is required to use this feature on Nintendo Switch systems. Okay, so sometime this month, all current Nintendo Switch systems are going to get the update. But the 2-star thing here is compatible systems must be linked to a Nintendo account to use virtual game card. Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive games and Nintendo Switch 2 edition games can only be loaded on a Nintendo Switch 2 system. There's a little bit of intrigue with just that statement. To move virtual game cards between two systems, you must pair the systems via local wireless and internet connection, but only when pairing systems for the first time. Up to 2 systems total can be linked per Nintendo account. So, what would be and notice too, where it says Nintendo Switch 2 exclusive games, only Nintendo Switch 2 is capitalized, but when it says Nintendo Switch 2 edition games, edition is also capitalized. So, what would be the difference between a Nintendo Switch exclusive and a Nintendo Switch edition? And why wouldn't a Nintendo Switch 2 edition be compatible with a Nintendo Switch 1 game? What I've heard, speculation of course, is that the Nintendo Switch, and this is, take note, this is only for digital games. People are thinking that there's going to be some sort of enhancement update to where once you transfer a Nintendo Switch 1 game to the Switch 2, you could potentially update that game to a Nintendo Switch 2 edition version of the game to where it now only works on Nintendo Switch 2 because it has the upscale and the better frame rates, the better upscaled visuals. And I'm wondering how, one, if that's even a thing, but that's my question, is why would there be a difference between an exclusive game and a Nintendo Switch 2 edition game that's also exclusive? You know what I mean?
I get what you mean completely, and my assumption, and this is where I feel like it's gonna be it's probably gonna be some misconception, like, or just some misinformation. my honest take is from this news is that the Switch 2 edition games pretty much is like when you buy Switch 1 games primarily, but only on the Nintendo Switch 2. That's what I'm assuming. Because you bought
Okay.
the game originally on the Switch 1 and you run it as a Switch 1 edition, and on a Switch 1 edition of the game pretty much, you are still able to transfer it back there is what my assumption is, considering that this is the exact same method that is currently with the PlayStation 5. You could run PlayStation 4 versions of these games, and you're still going to be continuing the PlayStation 4 versions of these games.
Okay, that's something I haven't heard. So, like, for example, if you go to the Nintendo Switch 2 eShop and buy a Switch 1 game, it's locked to the Switch 2. You can't buy a Switch 1 game on the Switch 2 and transfer it back to a Switch 1. Like, something like that.
No, more like it's more like it's the Switch 1, for example, like they put in, like, let's bring in Guilty Gear Strive for example, right? You buy Guilty Gear Strive on the PlayStation 4 version, and right,
Okay.
well, you buy the PlayStation 4 version of this game essentially, but you ran it on the PlayStation 5. It's not that it's locked to the PlayStation 5. You still have the PlayStation 4 version of this game. It's just gonna. But where it differs is that this is the same game, right? But this edition we're talking about is made exclusively for the PlayStation 5. So instead of buying the PlayStation 4 version of this game, I bought the PlayStation 5 version. That's what it is. That means
Well,
that that version is not compatible with the PlayStation 4. Does that now make sense?
I could see that making sense with a physical
So what?
game. Like, so for example, I've seen this, I've seen this, this example with Xbox Two, where like if you go to a store, you'll see uh, some boxes that say Xbox One, and then you'll see some boxes that just say Xbox. And I mean, at least so far, all of the ones that just say Xbox also work on the Xbox One. But there's clearly a like difference for from when you pop that disc into a Xbox One than if you pop that same disc into a Series X. Um, I my thing is for because these are specifically for digital games. Buying a now, I could see this being like, okay, if they made, for example, to take a first party game example, if they make uh, Metroid Prime 4, the most imminent example, and make a version of that game for the Switch and a version of that game for the Nintendo Switch 2, both games are basically the same game, but one is clearly made for the better system. That would be the Switch 2 edition. Is that a better? Is that sort of what you're thinking?
That is exactly what it is.
Okay.
That is exactly what it is.
Next question then. Um, how often do you think they're going to do this? Cause I can't see them doing this for a lot of games. At least not maybe the first year to sort of as a transitional period between people having a Switch 1 and going to a Switch 2. Like I could see maybe
Right.
uh, Metroid Prime 4, maybe Pokemon Legends ZA doing that. I could see even something like Tomodachi Life, Wario or not Wario, what you call it, Rhythm Heaven. I could see games that are still yet to come out that like we just saw in this direct coming out on both systems with their own versions. Maybe not some of the smaller games because what would be so different visually between a Rhythm Heaven on a Switch and a Switch 2? I can't imagine there being really a graphical difference, except for maybe a color uh, enhancement.
Yeah, neither can I. I think it's mostly good either going to be like artificially upscaled, like we've seen with some Nvidia. Like Nvidia's actually been showing this already for a while, where
Yeah,
some artificial upscaling essentially. That's all I can think of, but that's about the most that I'm going to give it, because I genuinely don't think it's going to be that much of an improvement. You know?
true. But like, so, uh, this thought also, like, hearing this, it makes me wonder if how the Switch itself is going to handle upscaling Nintendo Switch One games if it's not if it's not like I mean obviously the rumor is that it's going to have some sort of DLSS uh, capability. And really, the game that I'm most interested in seeing with that uh, with that on the system is Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition, because as good as that game looks on the Switch, uh, I'm gonna be perfectly honest. It does, at least on a pure graphical perspective, it does not look that much different from it did on the Wii U. It's in 1080p, whereas on the Wii U it was in 720p. But both games run at 30 frames per second. Uh, the the overall world design looks basically the same. The character models are definitely drastically updated, but to be honest, those character model updates could have been done on the Wii U. Like that's not something that couldn't have been done with the Wii U's own graphical, uh, you know, capability. Maybe some of the there are definitely lighting and shadow enhancements on uh, uh, X Definitive Edition, but in general, like the improvements to the character models are uh, more style changes than they are graphical changes. If you know what I mean. Like it's like changing. It's like uh, going from uh, Wind Wind Waker style Link to Twilight Princess style Link. Like uh, both games on the GameCube, uh, you know, are probably technically graphically on the same level, but it's just a style change, right? So
Right.
I am interested in seeing what Xenoblade Chronicles X Definitive Edition could look how it could look enhanced on a Switch 2. Because even now, again, as good as that game looks on the Switch 1, uh, it still has frame rate problems. And reasonably so. It like if you compare that game graphically to any other game on the Switch, like there are very few games on the Switch 1 that look as graphically intense as that. I could name like five, and some of them are, and uh, a handful of those are probably third-party games. But even like uh, the closest game I could say that of that scale that looks anything like it, one is probably other Xenoblade games, but also like Tears of the Kingdom, maybe. Breath of the Wild. Well, yeah, I could say Breath of the Wild too, because that game also came out in kind of the same era as the original X, and obviously there's a concrete example of the difference between the Wii U and the Switch with Breath of the Wild, because they came out on the same day on both systems. So I think both of those games, Breath of the Wild I think Breath of the Wild more so than Tears of the Kingdom because people were more uh, like critical of the the graphic the frame rate slowdowns and the graphical cut corners, I guess, of Breath of the Wild when it first came out on the Wii on the Switch. People were more critical of that than they were of Tears of the Kingdom because I think by the time Tears of the Kingdom came out, they were like, okay, we already know the corners they're gonna cut potentially for that that type of game. We already know what to expect graphically for the Switch, so and we already like Breath of the Wild, so we're going to like um, at least somewhat like Tears of the Kingdom for the same reason. So what I was going to say is I think Breath of the Wild and then really any of the Xenoblade games, but especially X Definitive Edition because of how really more intense that game is in comparison to all the other Xenoblade games. Uh, but it's not just those games. There's games like freaking uh, even something like just Metroid Prime Remastered. That game had a lot of what people liked about that port or remake in particular was sort of the a lot of the graphical techniques, subtle graphical techniques that they added to that game that were like that you didn't expect from especially the Switch. Like there were very subtle things like being able to see the reflection of Samus's face in the helmet was something that uh, like Nintendo really hadn't done in any game. But even just like seeing like water run down from her suit or fog like building up in the helmet as well, just very subtle effects that uh, for really any other Nintendo Switch game would probably be very difficult, but somehow Metroid Prime Remastered really pulled that off, and uh, it it was probably because it's a GameCube game, right? So they could get away with making that game look better, you know, to the human eye than some other Nintendo Switch games because it's just a smaller game as far as the file size. But anyway, I kind of went on a tangent there, but the I guess the takeaway is I am interested. I'm probably more interested to see what the Switch 2 will make some of these Switch 1 games look like than I am of the new games coming out. And of course, I am excited for the new games, but I feel like no matter what, they're going to deliver with most of these new games. But I still think I'm more interested in like what these enhancements to the Switch 1 library will be. I don't know. What is your like I don't know insight on that? I know I went for a while, but sorry.
Yeah, like I didn't want to interrupt you considering like that you were going on and on, so like I didn't want to interrupt you and let you just get your points out. But essentially, what
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming, like, and what I feel like going to happen is just that, like, obviously Nintendo is going to pretty much release a lot of this games that came out on Switch One as Switch Two versions of these games. Like as I said, when we were discussing this earlier, where I obviously mentioned that Switch Two editions of games can only be loaded on a Switch Two. This is assuming that they're going to pretty much release the games on Switch Two, but mainly to primarily work on Switch 2, not that it works both on Switch 1 and 2. And I think this is going to happen with a lot of the games out there. Obviously, they mentioned that most games will work fine. I can assume that some of the games that are coming out later down the road, oh, like they'll eventually find out that yeah, it's probably not going to work because we have seen like that games like Nintendo Labo, for example, right, where they use the IR camera, and a lot of like some of the stuff they use for the Labo kits. So they, I assume, would make us not like have that compatible with the Switch 2, which makes like that's an understandable reason. But other than that, I feel like this is mostly going to be a slow progression on upgrading the power of the Nintendo Switch.
Yeah. Um. it- I I uh I pretty much agree with that, especially like uh, at a certain point. Uh, I would say I honestly think Nintendo will probably drop the Switch One, and this is a bold prediction, but I think Nintendo is gonna drop the Switch One as early as 2026. I don't think they're gonna hold on to the Switch One as long as they
I
did. Uh, I I don't think they're gonna hold on to the Switch One. At least by that I mean I don't think they're gonna be making new games for the Switch One as late as they were like the 3DS uh, after the Switch came out. Because like there were still 3DS games coming out in 2019, like almost three years after.
right.
Uh, because I think 2019 was when Luigi's Mansion was was shown working on the 3DS. Which, by the way, of all the games, that one kind of blew me away the most because I was like, that's like a that's for the 3DS, that is like a really big game, you know. But like uh, for for the Switch, I don't think they need to hold on to the original Switch as long as they did the other, platforms. You know, what do you think about that?
Right. I feel like that honestly, this is going to be a situation where we kind of seen it with like what with the Wii and Wii U. Then we got like the Game Boy to the Game Boy Advance, and then
Mm-hmm.
we also pretty much got like from the Game Boy Advance to like, well, not the Game Boy Advance to DS, but like DS to 3DS, or no, DS to DSi, then the 3DS. So I
Yeah.
think it's going to be more of like that kind of a progression later down on the road. And I feel like we're right now in the beginning of just like skepticism, obviously trying to figure out like what are we actually going to see, you know? Oh, very
Yes.
like which is pretty much like we are obviously skeptical of the whole entire thing, but we are also interested at the same time considering that hey, Nintendo's coming out with a new console. So let's see what they can do with it now. Oh, and like what makes it different from the last since we've seen this progression happen before and it's not like it has always been bad. Of course, I think what really drives more into like what Nintendo wants and what I think the gaming industry kind of wants is like is there really a difference between like something when we went from like the whole SNES to N64, then the N64 to the GameCube, pretty much, because we see like not only just graphical improvements but different ways of how we actually interact with these games. And same goes with like how we went from the Game Boy to the Game Boy Advance, where that was a massive visual upgrade, and then from the Game Boy Advance to the DS, which showed that hey, two screens is going to be a thing, and what we actually and you're going to try out playing these games since it's going to be we're going to be utilizing both screens now, of course. And then we got when the jump from the like the DS to the 3DS because we're mostly skipping over to DSi, but the DSi was also a step in the right way for customization on how we actually can interact with more menus for the DS.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's something we could say, but it's not like a major road. It's like not a major stepping stone comparison to like when you went from the DS to the 3DS, where the
Correct.
3DS it actually innovated 3D technology, so we had more of a reason to try to see like what is the deal with it and is it going to be much more useful. Obviously, now that we know like in the long run, like we've seen like some of these innovations have failed, but and not in the way that like it was just that the technology wasn't there. It was just that it wasn't being utilized as much. Where we see that technology change, like when it came to the home consoles, on the other hand, that extremely showed that it is a great move. Like when we actually can find technological innovations on how we can play games, and
Hmm.
obviously there's so much we can go back to now. Like it is like probably like I would argue that sometimes like Nintendo consoles are probably the hardest things to emulate. Hey, ever since like the last like the easiest ones would probably be from GameCube and before that, whereas the Wii, hey, the Wii U, and now the Switch, like those are getting really hard to emulate, and that's actually a good thing. Same thing goes
Yes.
for like DS emulation, honestly. Like that is getting hard to just try to emulate, even if like even if we got the emulators working extremely well, there's not like a definitive way to play some of these games, considering that not only was
Yep.
the technology built specifically around these things, like it is just such a innovative piece that it's going to be hard to replicate, hey, when we actually try to redo these old concepts. And I think that's actually the beauty of like what makes these consoles, like the progression
Hmm.
of these technological consoles, just such an interesting way, and where I think everyone wants to see these progress later down the road. Because obviously, as like I said, like the DSi, obviously that was a system, but hardly anyone remembers that thing. Whereas more
Yes.
people recognize the 3DS and the DS rather than the DSi. Like the same goes for like what the Game Boy Color, pretty much. Like
Correct.
how many people actually like genuinely? How many people actually remember the Game Boy Color when we're talking about the Game Boy lineup, and then people just don't mention that the Game Boy Color was a thing. Like there's also like even more niche, the Game Boy Pocket. That was even
Yep.
more niche, and no one talks about that. And the most niche one out of all of these,
Micro.
the Game Boy Micro,
Yep.
because oh my god, no one ever talks about the system at all. Like I've seen no one talk about the system unless it's brought up in topics like when people were just looking back at Nintendo's history.
Yeah.
Because in
That
a like
that.
a more like game oriented, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say that came out after the DS was already on the market too. That was a that was a like by the time that came out, everyone
Yes.
already was migrating to the DS, and uh, like I don't even think. I mean, Nintendo knew. I think Nintendo knew the DS was going to be a success, but I don't think they anticipated it being like a 150 unit seller. I don't even think they anticipated that. Like it wasn't even a year. It didn't take. It didn't even take a year until they were like, okay, Game Boy's dead. Uh, DS, we're going all in on DS, and that
I think it's not that Game Boy is dead. I think it's more like we can safely move on from the Game
yes,
Boy lineup is the thing. Not
yeah,
that the
yeah,
Game
yeah.
Boy is dead.
Well,
Like I think that's
that's what I
more
meant.
what we should express, because Game Boy is like by far not dead, like as far as we know, because like there are so many precious titles on the Game Boy that Nintendo
Oh
still
yeah.
brings over, especially when you consider that like hey, these games are just being released on Nintendo's newest systems. Just now, like we can replay
Mhm.
these, but it's more like now that the technological advancements of this system pretty much prove that hey,
Yep.
everyone's actually willing to actually just jump the ship and just play on the newest systems,
Mhm.
we can stop supporting the old system now and instead focus our attention more on the current system we're working on,
Well,
which is
yeah, and
like I think one of the main reasons we're always having like when it came to skepticism when it came to like just having all these new systems coming out. And I think this is where we are right now with the Switch 2, considering that it's going to be more like the jump from the Game Boy to the Game Boy Advance in a way right now. That's what it is.
yes, and you know what?
Like that's what
That's
I'm
that's
sure.
not. I won't. I actually think that is a that's a big jump. So if you think if you think about this, right? Um, the
Right.
jump from the Game Boy to the Game Boy Advance is not the same as the jump from the original Nintendo to the Super Nintendo. The Game Boy, the original Game Boy, was
Right.
colorless. It was for the most part it was all black and white. It wasn't even black and white. There was no backlight, right?
Nope.
So you had black dots on the screen, and that was you had to sort of use that to, you know, basically simulate the what you're seeing on the screen. The the jump from the original Game Boy to the Game Boy Advance was massive because it went from sub NES graphics, like it was less, really, you know, it was lesser in capability as far as the games that you could play on it than the original Nintendo Entertainment System. Uh, then then the Game Boy Advance was from the Super Nintendo. In fact, the Game Boy Advance could basically run. I venture to guess that the Game Boy Advance could pretty much run any Super Nintendo game at that scale. You know, because that's the majority of the games that were on the Game Boy Advance were uh, a lot of them were enhanced ports of Super Nintendo games. Um, specifically, Super Mario World. That was my first experience with Super Mario World, and of course the one that I've been playing most recently, Mario 3. But like that was a big
Right.
that was a bigger jump than say NES to Super NES. And don't get me wrong, at the time that was a big jump, but uh, the the thing with like the Game Boy Color in particular is like there were not there were games that were made for the Game Boy Color that couldn't work on the original Game Boy, but they were few and far between. Uh, Very few and far between. Uh, like less than 10% of the Game Boy era games, like the the pre Game Boy Advance era games, were made specifically for the color. Less games, in fact, than like there were made for the new 3DS. I think there was only like 4 or 5 new Nintendo 3DS exclusive games. Uh, but yeah, the, specifically. Oh, I think my roommate's here. But yeah, what was I gonna say? Oh yeah, because of that very minuscule upgrade, it was people don't really see the Game Boy Color as uh, like it was to me. It was like a transitional system, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. And I think that's what we're seeing like right now with the Switch 2. Like it's obviously just a transition right now. We're not sure exactly what's going to happen, but from what like we can guess and what we've seen in the past, I think since
Uh, you're breaking out on me. Hold up. Do you want to try?
because
Hello?
for quite a while until games for that thing, instead they can safely move over to Switch 2. Oh, something wrong?
Do you want to exit and then redo the Discord call? Cause you're going very robot on me.
Yeah, I'll try real quickly. Give me a second.
Yeah, I'm gonna exit too.
All right.
I'm gonna go to the gym.
Give me 20 more minutes.
Do you want to eat?
I don't know.
Eat or not to eat? I'm about to still bite of this.
Are you good? And how do I sound now?
Uh, that works. All right. Um.
I'm trying to turn down some effects.
Oh, okay. Well, then I may have to turn down your volume slightly then, because now you sound a bit, louder.
You good?
Yeah. Oh, you know what? Let me turn down.
To see how this sounds, and it's right now using. Oh, you're crackling on my end though. I think I might need to turn this effect down on
I know why they gave me the burger.
my end.
All right. Well, I was going to say, I have about 20 minutes left in the stream for me personally. So, we'll go on for about 20 more minutes, and then I'll call it a stream. But
For
Wha-
instance, like we pretty much we only been talking about mostly like just rambling about like predictions and of like what we experienced with the past, but all in all, just to keep this short pretty much, and since we only have 20 minutes, I will say that definitely the Switch 2 is going to be a very interesting transition right now that we're going to experience, and I do hope to see how this will affect us pretty much like when it comes to like seeing the Nintendo Switch 2, because obviously we're fans of Nintendo, but that doesn't mean like we'll agree with every single decision Nintendo makes, you know?
yeah, and what I will say too is like, um, I'm not gonna say, I wouldn't say like the Switch 2 is going to be on the same level as like, in fact, I think it's gonna be a more, because I see like the Switch OLED as the like Game Boy Color of the Switch, right? I see that as like, okay, that was their one chance
Right.
at slightly enhancing the Switch, and it's gonna be more like from the the original Game Boy to the GBA. Like that's what the Switch 2 is gonna be like. Like it's gonna be a big leap to the point where people are. I don't think we're gonna be seeing full 4K or anything. I think we might see at least some games running at some like smaller games at like 1440p possibly, or a like higher than 60 frames per second refresh rate. Like we may see uh, something
Yeah.
in the 120
But
frames range.
honestly, I'm gonna be honest. Don't think. I don't think. I think 120 will be the max we should expect. But honestly, if it's at 60 FPS still, I'm not gonna complain too much, considering that I don't mind it. Most of the things being at 60 FPS,
Yes, yes,
especially considering that 60 FPS is still much like a super playable frame rate, and not only that, it is just the easiest thing to like render in comparison to like other frame rates right now, like that we see,
yes.
like that people expect, like the 90, 120. Like we do not need. Like I'm gonna be giving this super hot take, and as much as I am a PC gamer at this point,
Yep.
for most of my cases, I really don't think that we need to shoot any higher than 120 FPS at this point. Like
I agree.
there is no reason to go higher than 120 FPS. Because
And
like,
the reason I agree with
this
this,
is not just because I'm looking at the console side of things,
Yep.
but rather like like here's the thing, like we're seeing like, and I've been seeing this so much with PC gaming. We're getting way worse visuals and worse performance overall because we're pushing for these super high frame rates. Like that's
Yes.
not the point of what we're trying to play games for at this point. Like we're trying to play games just to enjoy a visually beautiful game and just having a great time playing it. Like obviously I get the super competitive side just wants the higher frame rates and all that, but is that really too much to ask for just to increase the like visual quality and optimize the performance of the games instead of just pushing out these high frame rates? Because at this point I feel like going higher than like 120 FPS is just overkill. Like you do not need this much, and frankly speaking you're just adding more unnecessary rendering power just to improve this entire frame rate. Because like I have a phone, like pretty much like the Red Magic 10 Pro, which I'm using, it has 144 hertz refresh rate, but I'm gonna be completely honest, I never used I never used that refresh rate to its max. The highest I ever went was 120, and that's only if I'm playing COD Mobile.
Yeah.
Whereas if I'm just using it as a daily driver device, I stuck with 60 F. I just stuck with the 60 hertz refresh rate, and I never had an issue with it. Like there are like very rare games out there that I will turn up the frame rate to be 120 FPS because it is just like asking for too much of the system to just push out
Yeah.
that much, and there's no reason to go higher than that. Like sure, it feels quote unquote smoother, but at the cost, we're pushing the hardware a bit too much, and it's gonna end up looking
TactiCast tried
visually
to eat
worse
chocolate
in the
milk.
long run. And this is where I feel like most game developers are pushing too far. Like, there's not a good reason to stick with like more than like 120 at this point, and 60 is definitely the max we can go. Especially considering that, and I can't believe I have to say this so many times, but hardly anyone using a monitor these days, like
Yes.
especially,
Yes.
needs more than 120. Like the like most gaming monitors I've seen that are on the easy enough to afford side are just going at 120 frames, like 120 refresh rate at max, and I think that's perfect. I don't think we need any more than that at this point.
Yeah. I'm gonna pick it back off this too. So my, I have a. We'll just say higher. I have two monitors that are higher than 60 refresh rate. They're at 75 hertz refresh rate. That is plenty. And I haven't played any game that uses higher than 60 frames per second on my computer. And my thing is, I think it's better
Right.
for, especially games within certain genres, to have a standard of refresh rate. Like I think, like for example, if you want to do like shooters, like like if you just want to say, okay, uh, let's have a consensus that all FPS shooter games should be at 120. Okay, I can see that. Something like fighting games, I don't. Fighting games should never be over 60 frames per second, in my opinion. Especially on the competitive side of things, like the uh, sick the the frame rate of of the FG of fighting games in general is like the primary sort of thing that people look at to determine a lot of the sort of meta in those types of games, right? And I think
Right.
if your game can reach 60 FPS, then I don't, which, well, let's just say if your system can handle 90 to 100% of your games at that refresh rate, uh, then make that the standard refresh rate. Um, but yeah, I don't, and I think.
Right, because like
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
okay, I was gonna say, pretty much, I agree with the fighting games being at 60 FPS because right now, oh, like the primary thing that we all, like, as a lot of fighting games players want is just the game to hold a consistent frame rate and make sure that we don't have any drop frames when we're playing these games.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
obviously, shooters don't really give a care about like the inconsistencies in some frame rates, obviously, because they'll jump from like what, like 100 from like 144 to 200, and then they'll be like not complaining at all, and then suddenly, but then suddenly, like when we note, like they just play it like at 120, and then suddenly dip to like 100, they're gonna start complaining for some reason. That's why, like, I feel like what fighting games should really stick with is definitely the 60 FPS because that is the easiest to maintain the most consistent performance, and that's what and I think that's what everyone wants pretty much. Like, we don't need like
Hmm.
a like super high frame rates for those games because they would. It's like much better to prioritize the performance and making sure that this game can at least hold a stable frame rate. eh,
Well, yeah, and
and
if you
because like fighting games
prioritize,
want to be looking visually beautiful.
Yeah, and if you prioritize, like if you standardize 60, then that will decrease the uh, like how often games in general have performance issues, because you're not trying to shoot for these ridiculous, uh, you know, frame rates over 120. Like if you try to shoot for like 144 uh, hertz refresh rate game, it's like, okay, there's no way that you're not going to have performance issues that bring down those frames to uh, sub 120. If you set it, if you just keep it at 120, then you're not going to have, at least for these high fidelity games on PC, you're not going to have any issues because you're locking it in, right? And I think for the console
Right.
experience, locking it in at 60 is going to be it should be. I think in the Switch 2's case, I think number one, any game that's going to work from the Switch 1 on the Switch 2, the majority of those games, they should be enhanceable so that they run at 60 FPS on the Switch 2. I agree with that much, but I don't think, in my opinion, there's no reason where there's no scenario where it should need to be over 60. But
Yeah.
after this discussion, we'll spend the last 10 minutes going. I kind of want to talk about sort of our hopes for the first few. Because in general, what I'm most interested in is the first party games that are going to be coming from just this presentation, like just from tomorrow's direct, because it's supposed to be 60 minutes long, an hour long, and obviously,
Yep.
I don't think they're going to be spending a whole hour just on hardware alone. I think we're going to be seeing at least two or three, I would say two or three tech demo related games, maybe two or three big, like maybe two big first party games and like two smaller first party Nintendo games, like smaller IPs. And then I also expect to see some big third parties. I think you need at least one or two big third party games to be so that you could showcase to people that, okay, these bigger games are going to be able to run on this system. So my question is, at least for the first parties, what do you want to see on the Switch 2? Like, within the first year, let's
Well,
just say. of the Switch 2.
Obviously, yeah. So obviously, I would hope personally for the new Mario Kart game to be released within the first year, since that's the very first game we saw exclusively shown on that thing.
Yes.
And it would be more of a surprise if it didn't come out within that time frame. But to be honest, like I'm a big fan of Mario Kart. Like that has been my all-time
Yes.
my favorite franchise, no matter what the game franchise came out afterwards. So I'm always just sticking with Mario Kart. But another game franchise that I would love to see, honestly, would probably be like, I guess, since a new Fire Emblem game would be interesting. But I'm not sure. Like, when did the latest Fire Emblem game came out? Like, what was it called again? Engage, right?
Well, yeah. So
Fire
we
Emblem Engage.
so we had three houses in 2019, and then the Warriors game came out 2 years later. I think 2021, and then 2 years later,
Yeah. So
Engage came out. So if you don't want to count Warriors, but in
yeah,
in the
and
eyes
so
of the
this lines
normie,
up pretty much.
yeah, it does line up. I'll Engage was. I'm pretty sure. So, Koei Tecmo was behind the majority of Three Houses, but Engage was
Right.
mostly Intelligent Systems, from what I remember. So they spent most of their time, like Intelligent Systems, spent most of their time on Engage. Like that was their Fire Emblem game. So I'm wondering. I don't know if we'd see, if we see Fire Emblem. I would I would pin that as a 2026 title at the earliest. Um, I'm not setting that in stone. I mean, it would be cool to see like a nice like uh, like a really nice looking. I want to see like you know uh, I want to see more cinematic. I mean, obviously, uh, keep the core gameplay, right? Keep the core gameplay of Fire Emblem, but I want to see a more,
Right.
uh, I want to see them. I don't know, make the game feel more epic than just, or, I like the, what's the way to put this? You know what I'm trying to get out here? Where, the game feels more grandiose, I guess. That's what I liked about Three Houses, was that the game had a very grand sort of war. It felt like you were participating in a grand war, but it also had this kind of odd portion of the game where it was like, oh, you're a teacher and you're teaching classes and stuff, and it's like, okay, kind of breaks out of the sort of war setting. And then Engage kind of did the opposite, where it felt not very much like a serious war that you're participating in, but it felt more traditionally Fire Emblem. You know what I mean? And I kind of want them to strike a balance of the
Yeah.
of both, what made both games feel good in a new Fire Emblem game. But do you have any other or anything to add to that?
Not really, but like, and I want to just get back onto the topic of other Switch games I would love to see, pretty much. Like one other game, pretty much. Like I'm not sure. Have you actually, if you actually have played this, but Mario 35, like
I did play that.
that was a
Yep.
limited time run
Yep.
game, pretty much.
I
We
did
got
play
to
that.
play. Yeah, I really want them to bring that back or an equivalent to it. So, like, it would be awesome if they did like something like like a Mario 35, or like I don't know, like how many other like games of Mario, pretty much, as we could like players in the same Mario game for the 35 format, and instead we expand that and essentially make it be a play like a collection of the old school Mario games doing the
Well,
exact same format. So like Mario 3, Mario 2, like Mario 1, obviously, and then like we get like Super Mario World.
well, you know what? It's funny you mentioned that because I don't know if you realize this, but this year is actually Mario's 40th anniversary. So what if, instead of doing Mario 35, and they don't even do a 8-bit version of that, they go 2.5D, or like Mario Wonder style graphics, or better. Or really, they could do any style, but they just, instead of calling it Mario 35, they just call it Super Mario 40, and basically do that same thing, but
I
keep
mean,
it
we,
keep
yeah,
it a constant thing.
yeah, and yeah, and also speaking of other things like Mario related, pretty much like Mario multiplayer games, essentially with the traditional Mario format.
Yeah.
We have seen like things like the Mario 64 online, and of course we also have seen like the Super Mario Odyssey online, where people were able to play hide and seek in those, or just play the game like normally, and just instead just have it be like an entire collaboration project like that.
Well, it's
I want
it's
to
funny you
honestly
say
see
that.
something like that from Nintendo officially, so that way we can actually have that. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's funny you say that. As much as I've heard people try to speculate about a new Mario game coming, I've actually had I've actually heard zero people realizing that, oh yeah, this is Mario's 40th anniversary. There is almost definitely a major 3D Mario game coming at some time this year. The only reason I say that, yes, we had Super Mario Wonder, but I feel like the 2D Mario and 3D Mario, I see, to me, they definitely have to have like completely separate teams working on those. At least the majority of people working on those games have. There's different teams working on those, and it's been 8 years at this point since Mario Odyssey, and that was their last new 3D Mario game, right? So there has to be
Right.
something of that scale coming, and people are, and I actually agree with this. People are speculating that the Bowser's Fury portion of the game is sort of a precursor to what we could see in a new 3D Super Mario game. And I think this year is the perfect year to do it, with it being Mario's 40th anniversary. And really, it's the only like major, you know, mascot of a character other than something like Pac-Man that has this, you know, uh, major anniversary coming up. I guess Donkey Kong would be another one, but they kind of dropped the ball with that. But yeah, what would you say?
Yeah, I think honestly, I could pretty much agree with all that. Honestly, like that's like obviously hopefully going to have like a lot more or of these kinds of games coming out, and I would love to see them just bring back more of these. And obviously, like how like we've seen like games like Tetris 99, and we're gonna also pretty much have like a couple of other games that might follow this kind of battle royale format. Obviously, Nintendo Switch 2 is pretty much pushing a little bit more for the online features.
Mm-hmm.
So why not like improve, also add more games that use more online features? You know, like I could expect that a lot. But one game that I don't, and I mean don't want to see like on the Switch 2 until like give it like a couple years after it comes. Like give it like the Switch 2 a couple years is another Splatoon game. Like
I
as much
agree.
as I love Splatoon, and I'm pretty
I
sure you
agree.
love Splatoon as well.
Yep.
There's no way I would ever want to ask for another Splatoon game, because Splatoon 3 then is put in an extremely awkward spot.
Yep. Yep.
Like
Yep.
this is like such a weird move to have Nintendo release this game, and it is going to be sad if it actually is going to be like this, because
Unless.
Splatoon 2 should have been the only game for the Splatoon franchise that came out on this system. Splatoon 3 is just basically getting mocked now because of how bad this is. Like if this gets released, you know?
Unless. This is something I hope that whatever they do for Splatoon next, I hope they actually do some sort of Splatoon spinoff. To me, Splatoon is very much like Mario in that the character and style of that game is just ripe and like it's just tailor made for like spin-offs to be made about it, whether that take the form of a platformer or an RPG or something, anything really. But I'd like to see where they could take the idea of these, just the idea of, you know, the Inklings and Noctlings, where they could take that idea in a different direction. And then after they have made this a spin-off type game, then they can come back and make the real Splatoon 4, right? And I think I think I think there's a lot of people who are uh, who have that same sort of idea, and that way you could sort of pad like, or you could sort of dampen the thought that everyone had. I don't necessarily agree with this, but there's a consensus among people that are fans of Splatoon that are like, okay, the games are starting to get samey, right? Where it's like, okay, there's not that much difference between, uh, you know, fundamentally they feel the same but different. We'll just say that. Um, so
Yeah.
so I think
Like,
I think do a spin-off, do some sort of, I don't know what they'll do for a spin-off, but do something. And then after that spin-off has had its time in the sun, then do
maybe
4. Go ahead.
Well, actually, I was thinking, like, since we talked about Mario Paint earlier, why not have the Mario Paint instead be themed
Inkling
around Splatoon
Paint.
instead? Since that's literally the whole point of Splatoon. It's just,
Yeah.
Yeah, so why not? right?
You know what?
I mean, that would be a nice idea for a spin-off, honestly.
True, true. And I also had, so there's, and I think this will have to be the last point because I have like 5 minutes. So, w- with your point on the online games, or just more online experiences, there was a patent apparently of filed of Nintendo developing another a GameCube style controller, and people are speculating that this could allude to Nintendo Switch 2 having GameCube games as part of the NSO package, and it would make sense if the Switch, if the Switch 2 is, you know, powerful enough to run, you know, bigger games. It should be more powerful, powerful enough to run GameCube games, at least in an emulation format. What do you say about that? And I would be excited because GameCube is one of those, I don't know. It's one of those things that people have been asking
GameCube
for
emulation
forever.
has been possible, honestly.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think honestly, and I don't doubt that it's not possible, considering like that when we have seen before, like, and I've seen this as well, like the Wii U pretty much is able to do GameCube emulation itself as well. Like,
Yeah.
It is, and then we have like other older older PCs starting to make use of Dolphin pretty well, and it's actually holding up pretty well too. So I think GameCube emulation is definitely going to be possible with the upcoming system, considering that sure it may not quote unquote be a much more improved graphical upgrade or just performance wise, but I think those little improvements still could hold out the GameCube performance extremely well. And there's no doubt in my mind that like if they are going to make like GameCube games come to the Nintendo Switch, it's gonna definitely be possible. However, and this is where I feel like this is a big however, is that like if they are gonna be pretty much doing that, we're gonna be having a problem with the analog functionality, since it seems like the Nintendo Switch 2 Joy-Cons might not have analog capabilities for their triggers. But that's a theory that I could bring up a different point, because here's the thing. The PlayStation 2 technically has been having analog values for everything for a while. It's just based on pressure sensitivity. So I think it's possible, and what I assume is going to happen if this is true, it's possible that the new Joy-Cons have the analog values in it just based on pressure sensitivity instead.
Yeah. I will have to. Apologies for this, but I have to end the stream now. I agree with all that. So, I'll pick up on this tomorrow when we're reacting to the the main show. So, but I have like less than 2 minutes. So I'm gonna have to end the stream here. So to everyone who was watching, thank you for watching, and I'll see y'all tomorrow.
I forgot you
Yeah.
were using that line.
Well,
Bye.
check out me on Twitch. Wait,
Yeah.
stream,
Yeah,
so,
check out Viral Mix. I'll put a link in the description after the stream ends. But yeah, thank you all for watching. See you in the next one. Bye.